What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Week 10 edition of the Start Sit Friday afternoon AMA. What is up, everybody? What an electrifying game last night, man. We are off a freaking fantastic Thursday night football game. The energy is juiced. We only have a couple more weeks until the fantasy playoffs. It's that time of year, man. It's November. It's Thanksgiving. Love to see it. Love to see it. Vince is in the chat saying those who are waiting, let's get those likes up. Appreciate you, Vince. Toronto Dave Fire intro as usual. Connor's in the chat. Let's go. Christian, happy Friday. Love having this time for Dynasty. Spartan's in the chat. What's up, good people? What's going on? What's going on? I just got the notification right before we went live that Nico Collins has been designated to return from IR. I don't know if that means he's going to play on Sunday, but we are getting closer. I love me some Nico Collins. Love it, love it, love it. Hopefully no one here played Chase this week. I had one matchup where I had Lamar and my opponent had Joe Burrow, so we essentially just canceled each other out in terms of quarterbacks. So I didn't play Chase at all anywhere. Thank goodness I did not play Chase anywhere. Hopefully everybody else was just as lucky. Let's get things off, though. Athlete Critique says, hey, Addison, thanks for taking questions. Thank you for asking questions. Health issues included. How would you rank starting one of these four in the flex this week between London, Cup, Tracy, and Connor? Great question. A lot of fantastic matchups here and players. I think London would be last on the list just because of the – is London even playing? That's the other – we're going to kick things off with me Googling already. He remained limited in practice. He probably will play. My personal opinion, I think I would go Connor, Cup, Tracy, London, I think would be my four. Paulson has James Conner as the super flex 30. This is super flex 30. Cup is the 27. Tracy is 24. They do play Carolina, so that's good. And London is definitely last. So at least he agrees with me there that London is last. So between the other three, Tracy gets Carolina. Fantastic matchup. Cooper Kupp is great, as we all know. And then Connor is just a workhorse as well and gets a Jets defense that has been bleeding fantasy points to running backs ever since Robert Saleh got fired. Tracy is away. The other two are at home. I think those three are so good. Like it's incredible that you're not able to start all three of these guys. I think in my personal opinion would be I would start James Conner of these four. Tracy's another really good or start. Cup is another really good start just because it's Cooper Kupp. They do play Miami, which has been a tougher pass defense, at least in terms of adjusted fantasy points. So there is that, but it's also Cooper Kupp. And if that game turns into a shootout, that could be fun too. Me personally, I think I would go Connor of these four. And then Kupp. But Tracy's also really, really good too. I really don't think you can go wrong here. This is fantastic in all areas. Peter, happy Friday. What's good, man? Chuba extension news is a bummer for Jonathan Brooks. Been wanting to acquire Brooks for a while, and now could be a window. But what do you think that he's worth? I definitely agree. I think the Chuba extension was really weird. I see Benjamin is in the chat. He's excited about the Chuba extension because he had Chuba. But for those of us with Jonathan Brooks, it's kind of a real bummer for all of us. I would still be acquiring Jonathan Brooks. Up to this point, I had basically been saying if you could pay a mid to late first for Jonathan Brooks in 2025, I think that he's better than every running back in next year's class besides Ashton Genty. I still believe that's definitely the case. And he's basically going to be a rookie next year, kind of like a Travis Etienne kind of thing. So there is that, but Chuba is better than James Robinson was at that point, unless he gets hurt, which was really the thing that spawned Etienne getting a lot more workload. I think in year two was that Robinson got hurt and then got cut. So I would still be buying Jonathan Brooks for anything less than a first. I think if you can get him for a second and something, maybe a couple seconds, maybe you could flip a guy like Chase Brown or somebody like that for Jonathan Brooks if you're looking for a more long-term perspective on running backs. Maybe you could, if the person who had Jonathan Brooks is kind of competing and maybe was hoping that they would get Brooks back, and you can flip them a kind of medium to solid productive running back like Ramondre Stevenson or somebody like that for Jonathan Brooks, then I think I would be doing that too. But anything less than a first would be fantastic. I don't know if anybody's really selling Jonathan Brooks off of this news because it just feels like a bad time to sell him. But if you can buy him, anything less than a first, I think would be fantastic. Also, what would you be looking to get for Andrews draft picks wide in a trade? I would not be looking to trade Mark Andrews, honestly. In fairness, Mark Andrews has gotten back to the point where I am not selling for less than a first, and I am not buying for a first. So it's kind of like that. It's that weird mantra where it's like won't buy for that, but won't sell for less than that kind of thing. Because I do believe that Mark Andrews is coming back to form, and I know that I saw Trax was down in here, asked the same thing. I don't know what to think about Mark Andrews, so I'll kind of wrap both of this together. Mark Andrews, to me, I just dropped the tight end dynasty run brain. I just dropped the tight end dynasty rankings, updated rankings this morning. While I was doing my rankings for that video, I had Mark Andrews in the same tier with George Kittle. He was a top 5 dynasty tight end still for me initially when I did the rankings. Then I kind of looked at it a little bit more and I was like, you know what? There is still a little bit of risk. He has been producing well. He is going to be 30 though. But then he went out and just did what he did last night. He had 18 fantasy points again, and was involved, between the 20s. He got the red zone touchdown. And I think that Mark Andrews is back, man. I think that we really need to take into consideration the injury that he had. He broke his leg, and that was the same injury that Tony Pollard had. It's the same injury that Isaiah Pacheco is going through right now. Tony Pollard talked about it, that he had the injury at the end of the year. He didn't feel right until around Thanksgiving in 2023. Mark Andrews was a little bit earlier in the season. He got hurt around-ish now. So it makes sense that about 3-4 weeks ago, he started to feel better. And that's when we've been seeing the production tick back up. So I truly believe that Mark Andrews is returning to being an every week borderline elite tight end for fantasy football. And if I were to redo the rankings, knowing what I know now from what happened last night, if I were to redo them now, Mark Andrews would be in that tier with George Kittle. He would be a top 5 dynasty tight end ahead of Kincaid, ahead of Pitts, ahead of Sam Laporta. Mark Andrews would be that high because I truly believe that he is returning to form as a borderline elite tight end, like I said. So, and Christian makes me think that Tank Dell could get back to what we saw last year too. It's the same thing with Tank Dell as well. Excellent example, Christian. He hasn't looked the same this year. He's been very inefficient. Also, Stephon Diggs being there, definitely hasn't helped. But for two of the last 3 weeks or so, basically the one game that they had without Nico when it was him and Diggs, then the game last week where it was just him without Diggs and Nico. And now as we continue on throughout the rest of the season into next year, it's kind of the same thing with Tank Dell. And remember that with Isaiah Pacheco too, that I think that there is going to be a buy window and opportunity for Isaiah Pacheco either at the end of the season this year or at the beginning of the year next year when he's not that effective next year in weeks 1, 2, 3, that you could buy low on Isaiah Pacheco and then you could have a better running back later on in the season, a la Tony Pollard. Basically what we were able to do last year. And now Tony Pollard's, really good with the Titans. So remember that with Isaiah Pacheco, if you have him or if you've been looking to buy him. Vince, am I overthinking this? I have Bijan Robinson. Another manager has Kyron, offered me Algier and a 4th for Corum. Completely fair, but I see a clearer path to relevancy for Corum with and without injury to Kyron. If that's how you view it, that's totally fine. I mean, it doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I don't think the 4th is necessarily enough incentive to really go off of one handcuff to the other, especially because he wants his handcuff. So I think if it was Algier in a 3rd, then sure. But if it's just Algier in a 4th, that's essentially Algier for Corum, more or less. And if you're totally fine just having somebody else's handcuff and you don't want your own, and you think that Blake Corum could get to a path of relevancy that Algier can't be without injury to either one of the other two running backs, totally fine. I don't think you're overthinking it, and you definitely have more upside on your team. That if Bijan continues and he's healthy, but then Kyron gets hurt, then you have Blake Corum. It's kind of like the theoretical question that everybody asks every year is like, which handcuff would you rather have? Would you rather have your handcuff? Or would you rather have someone else's handcuff? Me personally, my answer is just yes. I want all of the handcuffs. So I would love to get Algier without giving up Corum. But if it's just an Algier for Corum swap, I don't think it really matters. And then you ask who would I prefer? Again, doesn't really matter. To me, I would prefer to have both. My final answer. Let's talk about Chase and Burrow and their monster performance. Jamar Chase, man, he's freaking phenomenal. What is the stat line? He has like 450 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Ravens in 2 games this year. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, yeah, I don't know if there's really anything much more to talk about other than it was really, really fun to watch. And everybody who had those guys have just soak in on the fantasy points, man. Benjamin, Chuba extension has me stoked. Moving JT for the sake of improving my wide receiver room is still valid. Getting valuable 25-26 first is unlikely, so I'm stuck between making a bet on DJ Moore and Tillman or hold. I would honestly hold Jonathan Taylor. I went back and re-looked at some of the DJ Moore stuff. I would hold JT over DJ Moore in that package. So I rescind everything that we have been talking about up to this point. Keep Jonathan Taylor and don't trade him for DJ Moore and Tillman and something. Just keep Jonathan Taylor unless there's like a first plus attached with DJ Moore, essentially. Because DJ Moore's been really bad. And I saw another comment down in there. Where was this? Jordan, are we selling DJ Moore? Yes, absolutely. As a contender, 100%. We are selling DJ Moore. I don't know really what you can get for him. On Keep Trade Cut, he's still pretty highly valued. I noticed this the other day. He's valued as a wide receiver 28. If you could flip him as a contender for a Cooper Kupp, I think that's good. If you can flip him for Tank Dell, I think that's good. Flip him for Terry McLaurin, I think that's good. I would still buy Jalen Waddle. If you could flip him for Michael Pittman in something, then I would do that. Debo is kind of in the same boat. They're both basically valued in the same way, and I wouldn't sell T as a contender. I'd still hold on to T Higgins unless you can get to like Pickens or Jaden Reed or somebody like that, but I don't really think you can. So another question that killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Hopefully that answered your question fully, Jordan, and also answered your question, Benjamin. BG Gaming, who should I package or try to get for Stafford, Pollard, Chase Brown, and DJ Moore on a retooling team? Yeah, you. If I remember correctly, you also have Pickens and Zay Flowers, so I would try to upgrade one or both of those receivers to being better, just like a better, more consistent weekly option. Zay Flowers is he's been really good in some games and he's been really bad in some other games. A la last night, Zay Flowers bad. So if you're able to, move Chase Brown and Zay Flowers and get Rashee Rice, I would do that. If you can move DJ Moore and George Pickens and you can get Drake London or somebody like that, then I would do that. If you can move Stafford, I feel like you could just probably get picks for. Pollard, you're probably just going to have to get picks for, but maybe Pollard could be utilized. It's Pollard and DJ Moore for, Rashee Rice. That would be another one too. You're going to try to find, I think you want to try and find wide receivers that are currently injured or currently not producing. So maybe you can go get Jalen Waddle. Maybe you can go get Brandon Ayuk. Maybe you could get T Higgins or somebody like that. Those could be good pivot options for Pollard and Chase Brown. Add something to DJ Moore to get one of those wide receivers. DJ Moore and Stafford to go get one of those wide receivers. The issue is that only one of these guys is really extremely valuable right now, and that's Chase Brown, just because he's been producing well over the past 2 weeks. Pollard is kind of valuable, but he's old. Stafford, old. DJ Moore, old and not that good. So that's kind of like the struggle that you're going to run into is not everybody's going to really want these guys. And even the contenders that should want these guys may or may not want all of them, or might just want, like I said, Chase Brown because he's producing now. So better wide receivers or package them for a first if you can. Package 2 of these guys for a first. Sell for seconds. Just anything that you can do to get these guys off of your team and give yourself better assets to either stay more liquid with draft picks, but also people are going to want draft picks more than they're going to want these players in upgrading type of trades for you. So that's kind of like the prescription that you'd be looking at to get rid of these guys. With the contract for Chuba, would you drop Brooks in your rankings? He has 3 downsides, but it's hard to imagine they won't use him ultimately in a Monty and Gibbs way, but without the high touchdown upside. So I did answer a comment because of course the week that I'm making rankings videos, all this stuff kind of comes out and happens. So I dropped the running back dynasty rankings video where where Jonathan Brooks was a top 12 or top 13 dynasty running back, and then like a day or two later, it's announced that Chuba is signing a 4-year extension. So that's great. I would drop Chuba down. If you look at that rankings video, like I said, Brooks, I keep saying Chuba. I would drop Brooks down. He was 11 or 12 in my rankings. I would drop him down into the 20 to 23-ish kind of range. He would join the same tier that Bucky Irving was in, that J.K. Dobbins was in, that ETN was in. That is essentially, I'm still weighing the prospect of Jonathan Brooks because I believe that he was just far and away basically the best prospect in the 2024 class. And he's just currently injured, and the running back in front of him right now is productive. So it might ultimately be a split whenever they come back. I still believe that Jonathan Brooks is hands down better than Chuba Hubbard. And we just kind of have to wait it out until then. But until then, Brooks is still very young. I think he just turned 21 years old. And next year will be year 2 off the ACL injury. It'll basically be his rookie year next year. That there's still a lot of upside, but I think as of right now, you probably have to drop him in your rankings. You can't hold him up there as an RB1 anymore just because of the Chuba extension. But I'm gonna be very quick to move him right back up there if he just completely comes in and demolishes this backfield and overtakes Chuba just on pure talent. Probably won't happen this year, but probably next year. Next year, that could be something that happens. And like I said, I'd still be buying Jonathan Brooks too if I can. Here for the means of the $5 super chat, my man. What's going on? What's going on? Appreciate you so much. So here we are staring down the barrel of 3 injured to bad quarterbacks and Matthew Stafford looking at me to save the day. Am I giving up not trading for a quarterback? Yeah. So this is that team it's that one quarterback that's 4-5. You're 4-5 in that league, right? If I remember correctly, the offer for that was something crazy. Like he wanted a first for Stafford, or no, he wanted a first for Stroud or Purdy. What are you giving up for Matthew Stafford? Or is this a different league? Honestly, I don't think that you're. Oh, he's on waivers. Excellent. Yeah, just pick him up. I don't think that you're losing by not trading for somebody because, like I said, like you're 4-5 right now. You think that you can continue pushing, but like I wouldn't trade your first round pick for a quarterback that may or may not get you there. Like I don't view CJ Stroud as a massive difference maker right now. I don't really view Brock Purdy as a massive difference maker right now on a weekly basis. And Stafford is probably not all that different from either one of those two. So if Stafford's free, you can just pick him up, then just do that. The only other thing that I would say is that instead of paying a first round pick for quarterbacks like that, can you package Dak Prescott and move over to somebody like that? Can you package Trevor Lawrence and move over to somebody else? Go get, Cousins or Tua or Goff or Bo Nix or somebody, that you don't have to go right to your picks and you can replace them with the actual quarterbacks that you have right now. If anybody that's kind of looking to 2025 and beyond is, has any of those kind of guys, then you could just give them Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence or something like that. But no, I don't think I would just pick up Matthew Stafford and just see what happens. Because honestly, I don't think if your team is 4-5, now I wouldn't pay a first for Goff. It's the same thing. I would package the quarterbacks that you have right now, and if you got to include, if it's Trevor Lawrence and a second for Jared Goff, or if it's Dak and a third for Jared Goff or something like that, like we're just pretend that you don't have that first. Just act like you don't have that first round pick, and you can only work with the players that you have on your team right now and the players that are currently on waivers. And that would lead me to picking up Matthew Stafford, starting him, and see what your team ultimately does. Because like I said, like I was trying to tell you, like, I don't want to sell your first round pick. Then Stroud or Purdy don't necessarily help you, or Goff doesn't necessarily help you. That you might be more than just a quarterback away if you are 4-5 right now. So maybe you end up being 4-7 in a couple of weeks. You're out of the playoffs. That pick is like the 104 now, and you just gave up, your shot of potentially getting Luther Burden or Ashton Genty or whoever it else ends up being. God forbid you like end up with like a 102, 103. And that really is like Tet or Luther Burden or Genty. That's like what I'm trying to avoid you getting towards, just to try and salvage a season. I don't want you wrecking the future of your team to try to salvage and put Band-Aids on a 2024 year. That's what, like, I dropped the video like way earlier in the season, like a month and a half ago, of like, if you are at this point and you're kind of staring down the barrel of not competing when you thought you were, that's a tough pill to swallow, but you got to swallow it, man. Add like, eat some applesauce with it, drink whatever you need to help get it down, but you got to swallow that pill at some point. And you can make those moves to try to still see if you remain competitive, but you don't want to ruin the future of your team to try and do that. So pick up Matthew Stafford and start him. Or like I said, if you can move over to Goff, if you can move over to Tua or somebody like that, or Cousins, by just trading away one of your quarterbacks and a third or a second or something like that, then I would do that rather than paying a first straight out for a quarterback in a 1-quarterback league, by the way, to everybody else that was watching. That's a 1-quarterback league. Where did I leave off? Carlos, 10-team PPR Dynasty. I'm in first place at 7-2. Feel like I should make a deal for one more piece with my late first and 25-second. Target a guy like DK or Kenneth. A good idea. I would. Carlos, do you have a trade deadline? Hopefully Carlos is still in here. Here for the memes of the $2 chat. Love the analysis. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, my man. And if that's all I'm here to try and do is just talk people off the ledge, and hopefully, because I feel like it's hard to really analyze your own situation sometimes when you have so many personal feelings and stuff into it. So it's so if I can be that third party that kind of, not going to say introduces like common sense or anything like that, but it's just like, hey, let's just, there are other avenues. There's you think this maybe just option A or option B. Maybe there's option C. Maybe there's option D. Maybe there's option E. Maybe as a third party guy, that's what I can try to be, is to give you some different avenues. Happy to do it though. And I'm hoping for the best for you here for the memes. That I hope that picking up Stafford helps you out. And does just as much as what Stroud and Purdy are able to do. Carlos, I don't know if you're still in the chat to answer if you still have a deadline or not. Basically, what I would challenge you on is, do you need to make a move if you're in first place at 7-2? And if you do, does it have to be a move that requires your first round pick? So like, I would trade that first and second for DK Metcalf. I have no hesitation with that whatsoever. I would do that immediately if you can. Kenneth Walker, I think I would do that too, but I think I would challenge you of, do you need to make that move right now? Or do you need to make that move at all? Because like, if you don't have a trade deadline you could just take that first round pick, just see what happens. And maybe if you have an injury that comes up in week 12, 13, 14, 15, whenever you're on a bye because you're in first place, then you could use that first or that second as a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing, and use it that way. Because then you're setting yourself up to know the most information possible to make the best informed decision before spending away your first round pick to do that, especially at a time where you might not need to because you're in first at 7-2. Because the last thing I would want you to do is trade away that first right now, and then that player gets hurt in week 14, week 13, and now you're out the player and you're out the first round pick for the rest of the year. That's what I'm trying to try to avoid. So if you could take that up until the deadline, if you don't have a deadline, then you could take it through the fantasy playoffs. Maybe you don't even need that to make a trade whatsoever, and you just win your league outright. And then you still have your first round pick next year, But at the same time, I would take DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker over a late first and second. So I'm not opposed to it. If you can get either one of those two. Deadline is end of week 11. No move needed, but lost Rice and Godwin, so I'm scared to not have more insurance. Yeah, okay. Man, we need to have a trade deadline conversation with commissioners in leagues, people. Like this can't be what we're doing here. This is the trade deadlines that I've seen from people, because like when I'm like, I've been getting comments and DMs recently over the past week where it's just like, hey, my deadline's in a week. What do I do? And this is Dynasty. This isn't redraft. Like redraft, I understand if it's kind of like a roundish now. But Dynasty, man, what are we doing with these week 11, week 10 deadlines? They're ridiculous. Get rid of those. I'm not totally opposed to the deadline, by the way, in Dynasty leagues. I am team no deadline. But if you are going to have a deadline, push it back, man. Like give at least till the end of the regular season. Allow for people to make moves. That's what I want. But yeah, anyway, Carlos, yeah, if you can get DK or Kenneth with a late first and second, I would do it anyway. Especially if your deadline is next week. Then you're going to have to make that. You're going to have to make the decision anyway, with the, I won't say least amount of information, but lesser information than we would know from a couple weeks from now. But that's because of your deadline. Stupid. Christian, what are your thoughts on guys like Keaton Mitchell, Kamani Vidal, Khalil Herbert on a contending roster? Should I be willing to part with these guys like these to get more win now pieces? Been crushed by injuries. The issue is that I don't really know what you can get for these guys. That's kind of the rough part. That these guys are like, I don't think any of these guys are worth even a third round pick. That you're if they're a tiebreaker or they're a difference maker for you to get a different player, then sure, I'm fine with trading all of those kind of guys. I don't know what the piece is that you would be getting back for in trades that involve these players. That's because maybe that's just me, that I just have like absolutely no value whatsoever on any of these kind of running backs. But some people do, and I'm sure some people would make trades for them. But yeah, Christian, I'm sorry. That's like trying to package to get a fill-in wide receiver with a third. That's I mean, yeah, that's what I would do. Like if it's like Keaton Mitchell in a third for Tyler Lockett, then sure. If it's Kamani Vidal and 2/3 for Jacoby Myers, absolutely. I view these pieces as barely better than being on the waiver wire. So, like, this is just extra fab, in my opinion. These guys are extra fab. They mean nothing to me. They are roster cloggers. And if they're the difference for you to get a trade done, then go get it. Go get it done. Yeah, Douglas, Kareem Hunt, D-Hop. Yep. Move on. Traded Chase in a late 26 first for Nico and Brees. Woo. Theo. Even after last night, man, that's still fantastic. I don't see much of a difference between Chase and Nico, and Brees for a late 26 first is fantastic. Oh, after you played Chase. Wonderful. So that'll kick in next week. Andrew, 10-team Superflex, half PPR, tight end premium rebuilder. What do you think of trading Addison and Goddard for Downs in a mid-second? I'm totally fine with it. Addison and Downs, I think, are pretty much the same. And a second for Goddard is totally fine. So, yeah, I think it works on both sides. I don't really have an issue with either one of these sides. But the fact that it's a 10-team league means that second-round pick is a little bit higher value because, the 205 in that league is actually like the 203 in a 12-team league. Motorcycle just drove by. So, yeah, it improves the second round a little bit too, but Goddard gets helped by the tight end premium slightly as well. So probably cancels out. But, yeah, I'm fine with Downs in a second. No issue whatsoever. This is kind of random, but has anyone dealt with League Safe customer service? We had the commissioner go AWOL and we can't contact him. The League Safe customer service page doesn't work. Uh-oh. Did anybody answer? Connor? Doesn't look like it. Connor, are you on Twitter? Because if you are on Twitter, could you shoot me a DM just kind of like explaining the situation? Because then I could probably send it to somebody, maybe not directly at League Safe, but that could then send it to somebody at League Safe. Or I can contact Scott Fish because I'm pretty sure that Scott has a lot of dealings with. But yeah, the commissioner going AWOL is kind of wild. Help. Customer support. Oh, you can't click on it. Yeah, can you Connor, if you're on Twitter, could you shoot me a message? Or maybe I can copy off of this too if you leave a comment down below. I can try to see if I can help you out in the background with some people that I know. Jamie, what's up, my man? You hit some big money last night on some parlays, 5-leg, 8-leg, 9-leg. Profit was over $700. Jamie, let's go, dude. I saw one guy hit on multiple parlays of they basically like climbed the ladder with Chase and Burrow. That like one parlay was like Burrow for 250 and a touchdown, and Chase was to get over like 70, and then they did another parlay that was like Burrow for 302, and Chase was going to get over 100, and then it was like Burrow was going to get 350 and 3, and Chase was going to get over 150. Like he just kept climbing up the ladder, and he hit on all of them. So well done, Jamie. Well done, man. We're here. Start 2 between Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Adams. I will go with Aaron Jones for sure, and I'll play Devontae Adams instead of Najee against the Commanders' defense. So Jones and Adams for me. Jones for sure. And then I'll go Devontae. Trade Leggett or Purcell for Tracy in Dynasty. I don't think I would do Leggett just because there's a lot of upside right now with Deontay being gone. Mingo being gone, that didn't really matter. Leggett was already ahead of Mingo. Although don't chase after profiles like Jonathan Mingo, by the way. Lesson learned from that one. Everybody else. Justin and I were off of Jonathan Mingo. So there's another lesson. Don't chase profiles like him coming out of college. I'm fine with Purcell for Tracy because Juwan Jennings is still there. Debo's obviously still there. And even if they get rid of Debo, they bring in Brandon Ayuk. I'm fine with trading off of Ricky Purcell for Tracy. I don't think I would do Leggett, though. I think that's the difference in reading value. Antonio, what do you recommend doing with Olave on contending teams? Do you wait out his concussion return for easy end-of-season schedule, or do you pivot to a different running back, wide receiver? If so, who are some players to target? Great question. I don't know. I can't remember who it was. Yeah, Connor, I got you. I've been trying to see if we're still in here. Yeah, hit me up on Twitter. I probably won't get to it till after the AMA ends, but I'll definitely do what I can to help you out. And back to Antonio's question, there was somebody last week. I can't remember who it was. If it was you, let me know. maybe not like you, Antonio, but like whoever, if you're watching right now, somebody asked me about if I'm worried about Chris Olave's concussion injuries. Last week I said no. This week I say yes, just because that was terrifying now. And that was the back-to-back. So that was the issue where like Olave hadn't really had his concussions were kind of over. He had like one every year or so, one every 2 years. So I wasn't necessarily worried, but now that it was back-to-back, he was literally unconscious on the field. He went immediately to a hospital after the fact. Now he's going to take some time off like Tua did. That's now I'm concerned for Olave. Connor, it's right there. It's at AmazeHaze_. Here, I'll post. That's the Twitter. I just put it in the comments or in the chat as well. So I am nervous about Chris Olave now. So as a contender, on Keep Trade Cut, he's still valued as a wide receiver 23. I think that's pretty significant. That shows that he still has decent value there. I'm not sure if that's going to be able to move over to trade value, but I do think that there are other players that you can pivot to that also have devalued trade value right now, a la T. Higgins, a la Jalen Waddle. If you can move Chris Olave and get George Pickens, I would love to do that. If you can move over and get Terry McLaurin, I'd be good with doing that. Tank Dell, I think, is also a good pivot too. Considering that Diggs is going to, even with Collins coming back, Diggs is out for the rest of the year. So Dell's going to be in that wide receiver 2 role. I'm not opposed to moving Olave for Cooper Kupp plus if you can get it. Not opposed to moving him for where was his name? Like I'm not if it's Devontae Adams and a big plus, I'm not really opposed to it either for the remainder of the year as a contender. It's got to be a pretty big plus though. But I think basically Pickens, Higgins, Waddle, McLaurin, Tank Dell, I think are your big 5 to kind of try to go after as a contender. The other option could be, could you sell him for, to a rebuilder for if they have like an extra late first round pick, then you get a first, and then maybe you have something else to where you can go buy Jacoby Myers for a second round pick. You can go buy Cedric Tillman for a second round pick. You can go buy, Amari Cooper for a second rounder, or just buy Devontae Adams for a second rounder. And you flipped Olave for like a first or something, go buy Cortland Sutton for a second rounder. Is there a way that you can move off of Chris Olave and then buy another wide receiver just outright for cheaper? So then you kind of profit and you kind of create like a pseudo Olave for this wide receiver plus that kind of deal, essentially. So I would be looking at all of the rebuilding teams in your league, trying to see if you can identify any of those kind of more win now receivers that I just mentioned, or any of the other ones that maybe I didn't mention that are still good. Try to see if maybe you can buy any of them outright, and then that gives you the freedom to then move off of Olave for almost anything at that point, instead of trying to move him for a more win now piece, or feel like you have to get desperate for points because you had the points by the other wide receiver, and then you can move a little bit more intentionally with Chris Olave rather than desperately, if that makes sense. Yep, this is the fear, Christian, is that it's the back-to-back concussions are terrifying. The one every year or one every 2 years or so, not as much. The back-to-back that's brutal, man. I have so many questions. I got to go through so much faster. Bought T-Law for a 27 first. I think people are kind of freaking out on him. I really like that. I agree with you. In a Superflex league, a 27 first for Trevor Lawrence. I still like that. Hey, Addison, would it be crazy to trade Hall and Braylon Allen for Nico in a 12 team? Nope, not at all. I almost always take the elite. I mean, I shouldn't say almost always. Although that gives me the fine print wiggle room to get out of it later on. But almost 100% of the time, I will take the elite wide receiver over the elite running back. Braylon Allen is nice, but he's the handcuff piece. Don't really mind just trading a backfield for Nico. Give me Nico Collins in this. And then if you want to later on, buy another running back for, like a second or something like that, or if that means you can trade T. Higgins for a running back, or however that ends up working. I just want Nico Collins. So I would take Nico in this trade. Your thoughts on Anthony Richardson? I feel like the Colts will still need to play him next year. Yeah, he's definitely going to be a starting quarterback again at some point. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he goes back to being the starter at some point later in the year. Maybe that's a Joe Flacco injury that necessitates that, kind of like what happened with Bryce Young having to play for an injured Andy Dalton now. But I'm not out on Anthony Richardson. His value is just definitely a lot lower. I wouldn't necessarily be trying to buy him. I kind of been viewing him the same way that I viewed Justin Fields in the offseason, and had viewed Justin Fields early in the actual season when he was playing, that I just didn't think that it was necessarily going to last. So I wasn't going to try to buy him, but I was fine if people weren't necessarily selling him. So that's kind of how I feel with Anthony Richardson. I do think that he's going to get a starting spot back at some point, either later on this year in like the last 2 or 3 weeks, or, I don't know if he's the week 1 starter for Indianapolis next year, but they could try to like re-rookie him in a sense, to where they bring another bridge quarterback in, and then maybe by week 4 or 5, kind of like Drake May was this year, that he gets the starting shot again once he's shown that he's improved in practice enough. Chase, 12-man PPR, 12-man Superflex Dynasty League rebuild. I've sent St. Brown, Rashee Rice, and got St. Brown. Jesus, I need to hold on a second. Redo. 12-man Superflex Dynasty League rebuild. I've got St. Brown, Rashee Rice, and Nico Collins in my wide receiver room. Excellent. Brown is my running back. Carr, Love, Dalton is my QB1. Currently have the number 1 overall pick. Excellent. Would you look more towards filling out roster spots where I'm weak in quarterback and running back, or keep stacking wide receivers? I would start attacking the quarterback room if you can. I would running back should be the absolute last thing that you do on that list. And honestly, if you have to sell Brown to do it, I'm totally fine with that. Love the core wide receivers that you have right now. I almost feel like you're kind of, I wouldn't say done. You're never really done at the wide receiver position, but you are in a fantastic spot at wide receiver with 3 of my personal top 10 dynasty wide receivers, 2 top 5. So love that. We just need to get your quarterback room to a good point, to where you already have Jordan Love, so build behind Love. We just need a better quarterback too, and then Carr can be your QB3, and that's totally fine. So you have the 101 next year. At least you're currently trending towards the 101. Maybe that ends up being Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's Ted McMillan. We kind of have. I still need. I'm not going to tell you who that pick is right now. You shouldn't have. I mean, you can think like, hey, I'm thinking of drafting this guy, but you shouldn't be locked in on who that pick is at this moment. Lock can still change between now and May. But it could end up being a quarterback. I don't know what other assets or draft capital that you still have, but maybe you could try to finesse something to go buy another running back or another quarterback low. Like, can you go try and buy Dak Prescott low right now? That would be great if you could buy Dak low. He's not going to score you any points because he's going to be on IR probably for the remainder of the year too, based on the severity of the injury. And that's that. Yeah. And then you can keep, if you want to keep stacking wide receivers, I'm down with that too. Can you go buy Brandon Ayuk? Can you go buy Chris Godwin? I think running back should be the absolute last thing that you go for. Build your quarterbacks up, continue building your wide receivers up. You've done a fantastic job there. If you find a tight end along the way, then fantastic. And then running backs are the absolute last thing to do on the checklist, because they change so drastically year to year, and also week to week, more or less too, because they're just so much more likely to get injured or so much more likely to get replaced. If you want to go try to buy Jonathan Brooks right now, I'm all for that. Try to buy Trey Benson, I'm all for that, because those guys are future running backs that aren't really doing much now. So, those are a couple of names that you could try to buy at the running back position still to build them up. But yeah, keep going, man. I think you're on a fantastic path. You're definitely doing what you need to do, and I'd say just keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. Trust yourself. Just traded Sutton in a 25 fourth for a 25 second rounder. This is one of those trades that I feel like works on both sides. And, to Antonio's point, this is kind of like if you have a second round pick like that and you can go trade for Cortland Sutton, be the guy on the opposite end of this, you get Cortland Sutton as a win now piece that allows you to trade Chris Olave later, or like I said, more intentionally. You don't have to be as desperate on him. But I also think this works. And Jamie, I'd imagine that you're probably, maybe you're not truly competing, but you're not maybe truly rebuilding either. I think that a second round pick for Cortland Sutton is fantastic as well. More people are going to want that second than they will Cortland Sutton if you end up using that as a trade piece too. Redraft, would you send BTJ for Deebo Samuel? I also have Christian McCaffrey. Probably. The Trevor Lawrence injury does not sound overly amazing, and I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. Who is the Jaguars' backup quarterback? Oh, it is Mac Jones. That's right. Duh. So that's not horrible for like there are definitely worse backup quarterbacks for BTJ, but I won't say that that's an overly ideal situation. For redraft, I would take Deebo for the remainder of the year. He'll probably have a bunch more spike weeks. He'll probably be safer as well. And yeah, I'd probably just take Deebo Samuel. Blue, start 3, Hill, Neighbors, St. Brown, Cup, and Puka. What the heck? We did this last week too, didn't we? I'd start Amon-Ra. Sheesh. Amon-Ra, Neighbors. I'm looking at Paulson's rankings. He goes wide receiver 4 is Cup, wide receiver 5 is Neighbors, wide receiver 6 is Tyreek, wide receiver 7 is Amon-Ra. I think Amon-Ra and Neighbors are starts for me, given matchups. Tyreek is a good start against the Rams defense. Oh boy. Yeah, I think I'll sit the Rams guys again. I'll sit the Rams players and I'll play Tyreek, Neighbors, and St. Brown. The Tyreek week has to happen at some point, right? Like it's been 2 weeks now of mediocre games with Tua back. Like they also looking to trade for a running back, Gibbs, Kamara, Walker, and Mixon. What would you rank them? For Dynasty, it would go Gibbs, Walker, Mixon, Kamara. For redraft, it would probably go Gibbs, Walker, Mixon. It's basically the same. I think they're all great. I would say that for Dynasty, that it's definitely Gibbs, Walker, Mixon, Kamara for me. For redraft, I would say whichever one's cheaper would be how I would go about it. I'd love to go buy Mixon. I'd love to go buy Walker. Gibbs, I feel like might be a little bit too expensive to go get. Walker and Mixon would be great. Kamara is a good fail-safe option to go get some production as well. So the cop-out answer for me for this is whichever one's cheaper. But for Dynasty, it's Gibbs, Walker, Mixon, Kamara. Which two to start for athlete critique between Kyler, Tua, and Rodgers? Rodgers is currently my DraftKings quarterback. We'll see if that remains. Paulson has it. Oh my gosh. QB 13 is Tua. QB 14 is Kyler. QB 15 is Rodgers. God, I hate Kyler Murray and what he's been doing this year. It's so annoying. I think I'll start Tua and Rodgers. I think Kyler's riding the pine for a minute. He needs to gain my trust back. Although I will start Kyler over Matthew Stafford tracks. But I think for the most part, I think Kyler needs to get his head back on straight. So I'm benching him. Hopefully that teaches him a lesson. Scootsy's in a 14-team, 1 quarterback tight end premium league, working on a rebuild, been shopping Wandale. What do you think you would want to get for him? I'd love a second round pick. If you can just get a second, especially in a 14-team league, 14-team, 1 quarterback league, that second is not as valuable as just a normal second and a 12-team super flex. So a second round pick for Wandale would work for me. Pollard's dynasty outlook. He's a older guy, but he's productive. So he just is. I'd buy him for a second. I'd sell him for anything kind of basically more than that. And there it is. He's a productive old running back. Top 3 contenders trying to buy Jonathan Taylor now. He doesn't want to move any wide receivers. What might be his best offer is Monty and a 27 first for JT. Yeah, take that. I would take Monty and a 27 first for JT. I think Monty outscores Jonathan Taylor for the remainder of the year, and you get a free first. Boom. If you want to include Diggs in it, then that's fine. But I'm not. I wouldn't. Depending on what the plus is that you have to send back to get Diggs, that may not be worth it. But I would do Monty in a first for sure for Jonathan Taylor. Are you worried about Goff's schedule as a contender? Not to mention the fact they have wide receivers throwing the ball. Also, are we selling T. Higgins as a house money / win now? The T. Higgins conversation is weird. I would probably hold on to T. Higgins still. That offense is still really, really good. I don't know what you would get for him as a contender, because I feel like anybody that is a contender probably already has the Kupps and the Evanses. And if you're waiting on Evans to return from injury anyway, you might as well just wait for T. Higgins to return from injury anyway. So you're just moving T. Higgins over to a Pickens or a Waddle or somebody like that might have production or might not have production, which is, again, another thing that's, you're just waiting on with T. Higgins. As for Jared Goff, no, I'm not really concerned about it because that offense is just that good. It's kind of where are we at? In adjusted points allowed, their schedule isn't even really that bad for rest of season compared to a lot of other quarterbacks. I mean, his for the last 5 weeks of the season are really bad, but the next 3 weeks are very good. Playoff 3, he's second to worst in terms of the 3 games set for the playoffs. But here's the good news for you. One of those games is against Buffalo. That might be a shootout game. One of those games is the week 14 is against Green Bay. That might be a shootout. The week against the semifinals week against Chicago. I don't necessarily think the defenses really matter for the Lions defense or Lions offense. Might not matter for Jared Goff. That team is just so good. The system is so good. And, if they at all struggle to run the ball in any of those matchups, or they are shootout matchups, then I'm sure Jared Goff's going to be fine. Because, I guess my question would be, what would be the alternative? Do you then trade him to try to move over to a different quarterback? Like, who would that end up being? Like, is that, I wish it was Dak. Dak's end of season schedule is great, but he's probably not going to play. Can you move him for Baker? I'd be fine moving him over to Baker. Maybe you move him over to Bo Nix or Justin Herbert, but then it feels like you're going to have to add something to get to those other quarterbacks with Jared Goff, and that might not end up being worth it. So that, I think, is another issue. I just don't know if defenses necessarily matter for Jared Goff, or B, if they do matter, what's the pivot option, and what do you have to add to pivot over to that other player? Will's in a 12-team Superflex, currently in first with a 14-4 record. What moves to improve the team have a 25 first and 226 firsts? I don't know. Am I missing a second? I don't know what your team looks like. This is kind of the same thing, though, as you're in first place. You have extra firsts. Your trade deadline is in 2 weeks. And your league doesn't value these picks highly. So it might not even be worth it you might not need to even improve your team with first-round picks. B, your team apparently does not value picks highly, so you might not be getting anything even worthwhile with those first-round picks. And 3, I also just don't know what your team looks like unless I'm missing it to even tell you if you even need to improve or not. But you're in first place, so I'd imagine you probably don't. And I I'm sorry, but I feel like I can't spend enough time on this because there wasn't enough information coming back to me. But you probably don't need it. You're in first place. Josh in a 1 quarterback start, 8. Trade away Garrett Wilson for a low 25 and 26 first, low second, and Jalen McMillan. Start 8. Must start 2 running backs. 16 team. So no. So if this is by low 25 and 26 first, you mean like later first, like that would be like the 113, 114, 115. No, I'm not doing that. Especially in a 16 team 1 quarterback, it's a late first. I'm not doing that. I'm taking Garrett Wilson pretty easily in this then. Yeah, low equals late. Okay, yeah. Yeah, like if it's the 113, 14, 15, 16, that's what these picks ends up being in a 1 quarterback league. I'm not doing that. I'm keeping Garrett Wilson. In a 16 team half PPR superflex, are 2 late seconds too much for Tillman? Pick 28 equals around. Yeah. So in a 16 team with late second round picks, no, I don't think they are. And especially, I mean, you mapped it out very well there with the pick 28 is like the 3.04. Yeah. A late second in a superflex, in a 16 team superflex is more like a 3rd round pick in a 12 team superflex. And if you're just going to pay 2 of those for Cedric Tillman, I'm totally fine. I'm on board with that. Give me Cedric Tillman in those ones. I have Mark Andrews, Hawk, and Kincaid at tight end. I'm not hurting at quarterback, but was considering a Kincaid for Trevor Lawrence swap. Yeah, absolutely. I would take Trevor Lawrence in that. It's kind of similar to where like Kincaid has also been really disappointing. I don't know if we ever get to the point where Kincaid is a massive difference maker. He might just be Dallas Goedert, and that kind of sucks. Or maybe he's like, maybe it takes some time like David Njoku to where he really gets integrated into an offense more or gets more involved in the offense. But yeah, in a superflex league, if you could trade that to just go get Trevor Lawrence, even as your QB3, I think that's totally fine. And just hope that I think that there's probably better hope that you can get something out of Trevor Lawrence in the near future than you do Dalton Kincaid. And especially you have the extra tight end surplus. Yeah, go get Trevor Lawrence. I love that. Got a trade offer. I send Flowers, Chase Brown, and Pollard for Rashee Rice and Jalen Warren. Oh. If you can get an extra second on top of that, I would love to see what you could get differently than Jalen Warren. Because I don't value him as much. I think he is by far the worst player in this deal. So if you could get something that's better than Jalen Warren, or like you said, get a second on top of it, then I'd be totally fine with this trade. I'd just go get Rashee Rice, man. This is fantastic. Fantastic way to start packaging and retooling for 2025. But I think that there's a better deal. I think there's a better deal to be had by either replacing Warren with something better or getting something additional on top. I do agree with you on that. Joe, what's up, man? Happy Friday. Oh, here you go, Connor. I don't know if you saw that too. You could try to reach out to there. I'm also at the end of this. I'll make sure to hit up either Scott Fish or somebody with League Safe too. But I appreciate you, Joe, for that one. Martin, trade Jacobs, Debo for CMC and James Conner. Yeah. In a redraft, this is pretty easy. I don't know if this is a redraft or not. In Dynasty, I would also do this though. I would take CMC over Jacobs, and Debo and Conner are totally fine as a swap too. Jacobs and Conner, I think, are a fine swap, and then CMC over Debo too. There's a lot of ways that you could compare the two sides. But in Dynasty, this is totally fine. In redraft, I absolutely want Christian McCaffrey and Conner. What do we think about these 2 Dynasty trades that I made? Got Dobbins and Franklin and traded away Evan Ingram. I like that. I got Rice, Ayuk, and Collins. My season was over, so I looked to trade for next year. Were there 2 trades? Got Dobbins and Franklin and traded away Ingram. That's only one trade, unless I'm missing a second trade. Oh, traded away Madison, Swift, Otten, Garrett Wilson, and Tillman for Godwin, Pacheco, Puka, and Tracy. What the heck? Okay, so Puka over Wilson. Tracy and Swift can basically cancel out. Pacheco over Tillman and Madison, maybe. Then you got an Otten in there. I don't mind that. Still my first and currently in 10th out of 12th. Yeah, you're reloading for 2025. I like getting Puka in there. I'm curious to see what Otten looks like whenever Evans and Godwin come back. You got Pacheco for next year, Tracy. I like this too. I like the Evan Ingram one for sure. But I do like this one. I feel like you're just kind of getting rid of some weird assets in Madison and Swift. Maybe you took advantage of Kate Otten's increased value, of Tillman's increased value, and you just went over and you got some players that are going to produce for you next year. I like that. I like this deal. I'm not like, oh my God, this is the best deal I've ever seen in my life, but I'm like, I like the deal. I like it. I got an offer from the first place owner. Give up Olave for QJ and Christian Watson. Gross. I want Chris Olave in that. 3 and 6, fifth in points for, second in points against. That's the worst. No 25 first, and my 25 first is with a rebuilding team, so no chance I get it. What in the world do I do here? You can't do anything. I think you start playing for 2026. That's essentially what you start doing. Even if that makes your 2025 first better and improves the other team's outlook because they have a higher first. But I think you got to do what's best for your team. You can't push your chips in just to compete for that 25 first. I think you just got to learn from the mistake of not trading away your first round pick so early on, or not trading it in the off season, expecting your team to be better than what it might actually end up being. And you're going to have a long path ahead of you, David. I'm sorry. This is a really rough situation to be in, but you are going to have probably a 2 to 3 year road before you even start thinking about being competitive again. And that's just pure respect. Your team could be better, or could be better for next year if you have a lot of injuries that you sustained. But it's probably going to end up being a 2026 and beyond kind of thing. Which sucks. That is like a terrible place to be in. But there's a lesson in here that, and it's been something that I've been formulating and I want to talk about in the off season when I have more time, and we're talking about more dynasty theory and dynasty strategy of pretending that you don't have first round picks and just not trading them in the off season. And if you do trade them, have a very specific rules in place and process for when you trade away your first round picks and for specific players, specific situations that gives you a well-defined process and rule base to trade away those first round picks so that it insulates you from situations like this. So it's something that I'm going to try and work on in the off season, kind of like a 10 commandments kind of thing for Dynasty. But yeah, I mean, the main one is basically just pretend that you don't have first round picks. I feel like that's the biggest problem that a lot of people get into in Dynasty, especially when they're very new, is they're so willing to trade away their first because they don't do anything for you until that first is then very, very valuable. And then they turn into something much greater than that. I've made that mistake time and time again. I think I made that mistake again in Trade Addicts 11 with Russ. I traded away my first round pick. I traded it for Puka, so it hasn't been the worst thing in the world, but that pick was also Malik Neighbors. So it's kind of been rough, and I'm kind of fighting to compete. I'm 4-5 right now, and stupid Puka came back, and then he got ejected, and I lost by like 4 points. Whatever, I'm not salty. But yeah, David, I think you got a long road ahead of you, and I think it's going to suck. But if you can, I think it'll be that much more rewarding when you come out of it on the other side. Where are we at? Tracks, you're annoying. Ohio State is so annoying, dude. This is like the one year that we should have won. And if we can't even win the one year that we should have won, we also should have won last year, but you guys had Marvin Harrison. This year you don't have Marvin Harrison, and we actually locked up Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka really well, minus the one Ibuka touchdown. But last year last year was like the first year where you legitimately did not have an NFL caliber quarterback because Kyle McCord is bad. And also whoever I'm blanking on, Will Howard is also not good. So 2 years in a row, you don't have an NFL caliber quarterback, and we still can't beat you. And it's really annoying. We're perennially like that little brother who's trying to like swing upwards at his bigger brother, and the bigger brother's just like, no. And it's so stupid. I hate it so much. I hate Ohio State. Joseph, thoughts on any moves as a buyer? So we've got the rosters being fleshed out. We got Burrow, Mahomes, Jones, Herbert, Bijan, Jones, Kareem, Hunt, Najee, Madison, Kupp, Adams. Your team is fairly old. Don't know if I love that. Moved Roman to third for Kupp and Aaron. Moved May, Hunter Henry in second for Mahomes and Ferguson. I like that one. Your team got old quickly, though. Thinking of moving my late 25 first or Herbert, and thoughts on my two moves. I don't know if I love the Rome Odunze one. I think it's fine because you also got Jones, but I don't know if I love it. The issue that you're going to run into, potentially, you could work it well, but your team is going to get old really quick, and a lot of your players are just going to fall right off of the face of the earth. In a year from now, you might not have like 3 of those wide receivers or 4 or 5 of those wide receivers, and you might not have like 3 of those running backs. And you might not have Daniel Jones either. So, and that literally could happen so quickly that you're like almost blindsided by it. But I'm telling you, man, the NFL moves quickly and it happens so freaking fast. That's the concern of moving young upside for just old producers. I mean, it's fine when you do it. Everything's fine whenever you do it, in moderation, right? But when you start going overboard with it, not saying that you have gotten to the overboard stage yet, but I think that you're moving towards it because you're contemplating moving your first round pick, or you're moving Justin Herbert. And I'm scared of what that ends up looking like, or who you're thinking of moving them for. I like where your team's at right now. I would just caution you about proceeding down that path that you're going, because I think that you can be very competitive like this. You might not need to make any more moves. You might not need to move your first round pick. You might not need to move Justin Herbert. I would honestly almost rather tell you, how can we move off of Kareem Hunt right now? How can we move off of Devontae Adams right now? How can we move off of Cooper Kupp right now? Can you move off of, Christian Watson? Can you move off of Najee Harris? That would be the advice that I would tell you, to almost move off of those guys. 2 other players that are still similarly productive, but maybe have more insulated value because they're younger. It's kind of like I talked about it on the trade show this week of, can you try to find moves to make that simultaneously continue your competing ability for 2024, but also still allow you're essentially rebuilding and competing in the same deal. And that's what I would love to see if you're able to do something like that. I don't know if I can think of anything off the top of my head, but basically it would be Kareem Hunt, Devontae Adams would be the 2, maybe Najee as well, maybe Cooper Kupp as well. How can we move 1, 2, or all 4 of those guys for younger players that are still competitive, that don't change your competing ability this year, but also give you some longevity and insulation for later on in the year? Kareem Hunt is like number 1 of that. Like I would be selling Kareem Hunt so quickly over the next week or 2, because he's only going to be valuable really for the next, like, I think 2 or 3 weeks. As soon as Pacheco comes back, they might be the best case scenario when Pacheco comes back is that Kareem Hunt is still the 1A and still seeing solid enough volume, but the production is going to dip because he's not seeing as much volume as he is right now. He's getting like 20 plus carries a game. He's not going to get that when Pacheco comes back. That's best case scenario, that they're in like a 50-50 or a 60-40 split. Worst case scenario is Pacheco comes back, he's actually good, and he relegates Kareem Hunt into a backup option. So then if Kareem Hunt's just a backup at his age, he's not going to get a contract next year, and he's just gone. He just like you lit a tissue on fire and you just watched it disintegrate in front of your eyes. That was Kareem Hunt, you know. Which I think it's okay if he's not as center or not as integral to your offense. Because I rode Jordan Mason in a bunch of leagues. Jordan Mason was kind of the same way. And I didn't trade off of Jordan Mason. I just used him for the production. Using Kareem Hunt for the production is totally fine. But I also think people are maybe overvaluing Kareem Hunt a little bit, that you can get him, that you can trade him for a little bit higher value than where you probably should be. Because he could really fall off the face of the earth in like 3 weeks when Pacheco's back. So yeah, Joseph, it's your first year in Dynasty, so I understand you're making all these moves to try to compete right now. I've been there. I'm sure a lot of people in the comment section have also been there, but I would just caution you to not go so hard into buying up all these old guys just because you're competing. There are ways that you can do both simultaneously, and those are the best teams that end up being Dynasty teams, that you have this fantastic blend of productive youth, productive age, upside youth, rookie picks in the back end. You got it all coming in all together, and you're just a freaking juggernaut, man. I want to help build you into a juggernaut. Adams for Shakir is kind of interesting. Bateman for Hunt is kind of interesting too. I'm not sure if those specifically are the guys that I'd be looking at. Devontae Adams Shakir and Devontae Adams are like right next to each other on KTC. Tillman might be an interesting one too, because then you get the upside of what happens if Tillman continues going on. Leggett might be an interesting one for Adams. Where's Hunt on KTC? I scroll too low. Wow, he's still low. RB4. So maybe you can't trade Kareem Hunt for him all that much, but maybe you can move him for maybe you just ride Hunt out. Oh yeah, you do have Shakir and Leggett. Duh. Hunt's KTC value is so low. I mean, you'd be looking at trading him for like Tyjae Spears. But maybe if you find somebody that really wants Kareem Hunt and you could trade, I mean, I bet you there's people out there that would trade you Travis Etienne for Kareem Hunt. I'd bet you that there's people out there. Or Rachaad White for Kareem Hunt. Or Ramondre for Kareem Hunt. I'd bet you that there are dynasty managers out there. I don't know if they're in your league, but there are dynasty managers out there that would do that. Adams for Tillman might be the interesting one, though. That might be interesting. You're swinging on some upside, but I think Tillman's going to be great for the remainder of the year too. And then you get the upside of what if he does turn into Nico 2.0 or Kenny Golladay 2.0. But yeah, any more questions or anything like that, Joseph, I'd be happy to help you out. But let's see what else we got here. Chris, and I apologize. I do go through everybody else's questions. If anybody here is new, I do go through questions. I just talk a lot and try to help everybody. I try to give everybody the due time for these questions. But Crispy Chicken. That's such a clever name. 10-team Superflex IDP, first place at 7-2, but I'm 4th in points for, 9th in max points for. Wow. Make a move to lock in a championship. Lamb, Neighbors, Cooper, Dell, Zay. Yeah, I'd be looking. Your running backs and wide receivers are locked in. It'd be the quarterback position, considering that you probably just lost Trevor Lawrence, maybe for the remainder of the year. Goff and May are pretty solid, but I don't know what other picks that you have or anything like that. But could you maybe trade away? Goff, and how many players do you start as well? That'd be the other thing. Because if you don't start all these players every single week, that would be the benefit. That'd be good if you don't start everybody here. I feel like I need more information, Chris. What I would like, because what I was thinking, what I would like to do is I would like to try to see if you can upgrade off of Jared Goff. You have 225 first and seconds, start 9. Excellent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're sitting one of these players or two of them every single week. Would you be able to trade away either like Goff and Amari or Goff and Chuba? Or maybe it's Drake May. Maybe you could try to really bounce off of Drake May. Not to say that I'm like eager to trade off of Drake May, but he might be the most valuable to get you up into a higher tier of quarterback. Like Drake May and Chuba or Amari, does that get you up to like Joe Burrow? Or does that get you to, man, I would love Jalen Hurts too. If you can somehow move into that range. The Hurts, Burrow, maybe Jordan Love range. I would love that so much. How do we get there? Goff, Chuba, and a pick. Goff, Flowers, and a pick. How do we get there? That's probably what I would probably try that. Goff, Flowers, and a first round pick for Jalen Hurts. I don't know if that gets it done. Depends on where that first is. Add a second to it. That's what I'm looking at though, Chris. Is I'm trying to that or maybe it's May and a first for Jalen Hurts. May, Amari, and a first for Jalen Hurts. Maybe it's something like that. That's what if you can lock in an elite quarterback without using the 101 or the 102, I would keep that pick for all you can. But then if you could trade away the other one, that would be fantastic in a package deal. I want to see if you can get a top 5 quarterback. And however, if you have to give up Goff to do it, if you got to give up May to do it, I would say whichever one the other person is more interested in, or whichever one is cheaper to use to move up to get that quarterback, I would love to do that. I have May ranked over Goff. I'd rather have May than Goff for Dynasty. So if people are valuing them pretty equally and they're just like, yeah, if you give me one of May or Goff and Zay and a first, or and Amari and a first, or and Chuba and a first, then trade them Goff for it. That's what I would love to do. If you could pull that off, that'd be fantastic. Captain Kirk, Murray versus the Jets or May versus Chicago, currently second in this league, playing the first-ranked team who has Chase. Oh, my gosh. In that instance, then, I think I would play Kyler Murray, and I'm swinging for the fences. I'm hoping that Kyler Murray does well against the poorest Jets defense ever since Robert Saleh got fired. I'm hoping that maybe Marv gets us a big one. Maybe Kyler himself rushes for 50, 60 yards. Maybe he scores on the ground as well. I think there's more upside with Murray to try to catch the Jamar Chase team than there is with Drake May. So I'll play Kyler Murray and swing for the upside because you got to swing for it. You got 50'd on by Chase. How do you feel about Dak and Trevor getting injured and has a chance of being season ending? I'd love to buy both of them, especially Dak Prescott, but I'm not concerned for CeeDee Lamb. Does kind of suck for BTJ and everybody else. It sucks for like Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert and probably Evan Ingram too. But if you could use this as an opportunity to buy these guys, I would love to. I'd love to buy them for cheaper than what they were. Like if you're already not competing, but you still had been holding on to like Geno or Stafford or Cousins or Justin Fields or Anthony Richardson moving over to one of those guys, I think would be the play. Dylan, I'm on a 1-year reload. Sold most of my running backs for young receivers. I was banking on Pacheco being an auto starter next year. Should I make other plans? No, I think that Isaiah Pacheco will be fine next year. I think he's just going to be a ramp up kind of a guy. If that's in response to my Pacheco fear with the injury, you could try to sell Isaiah Pacheco now. I feel like maybe people would be getting excited if he's very close to coming back, especially contending teams. That if you're able to sell Isaiah Pacheco for, if you can sell Pacheco for Rashee Rice or Pacheco in a second for Rashee Rice, that's phenomenal. Or if you can go after, Waddle or somebody like that as a disappointing season, then maybe that's what you do with Isaiah Pacheco. I'm also just not opposed to holding on to him. I just would probably have tempered expectations for how September probably looks next year. But then October, November, I think we get back into being Isaiah Pacheco. I gotta go with these questions so much faster. What would you trade Bigsby, 80 Mitchell, and a 25 third for Higgins immediately? Also, would you trade Olave for Tillman in a late first immediately? Both those are like smash auto accept Pickens and Tillman in the first. Done. Hi, Addison. Thank you for your content. Thank you for watching the content. What do you think of trading away Laporta for Kittle plus Josh Downs? Where's Josh Downs ranked for the future? Well, I can tell you right now that I currently have George Kittle ranked ahead of Sam Laporta for Dynasty. So the fact that you're getting Josh Downs on top of the better tight end, in my opinion, auto win. Downs, I think, is great. I wanted to have him in my top 30 for the wide receiver rankings video. I think if you nixed Chris Godwin from there and you put Josh Downs in, I think that's totally fine. Downs would have been in the top 32 or 33 if I had kept going. But he just feels so dependent on Anthony Richardson on Anthony Richardson not being there. He feels so dependent on Joe Flacco that sucks. But I think Josh Downs is a very talented player. He's shown that in both seasons. He just needs more consistency at the quarterback position to be better for fantasy football and more consistent himself for fantasy football. But the fact that you're getting Kittle and Josh Downs for just Sam Laporta, I think that's an easy smash. Give me Kittle and Josh Downs. I have May as my QB 7 over Stroud and Mahomes as a 1-2 turn superflex, 1-2 turn player in superflex. Am I crazy? I'm not even a Pats or UNC fan. I think you're slightly crazy. I think you're ahead of the market. I think Drake May is going to get there, but I think currently he's just not there now. I think having him over Stroud, I think, is a little recency bias. I think having him over Mahomes is also a little recency bias, but I get it. But it's also Patrick Mahomes. I do understand that, if Drake May were to get more receiving options, that would be insane. But also at the same time, we did this with CJ Stroud where we crowned these year 2 quarterbacks. I feel like, we did it with Baker Mayfield. We've done it with a couple other guys that, I'm wary of crowning Drake May like we did with these other quarterbacks, and then they're underperforming based on that. But at least May has the rushing upside. So he has that too. I think QB 7 is definitely above market for sure. I think you're a little crazy, but I don't think you're overly crazy. Because I think he will get there at some point. Just maybe not right now. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you answering my questions every week, and I learn even more from everyone else's. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you so much, Chase. I'm glad that I'm able to help you and teach you guys. That sounds so like talking down on you guys, but like I just hope that I can put situations or extra context on things and give additional. I don't know what I was trying to say there. I think every decision has more options or more context than necessarily needed, and maybe if we all think a different, I don't know. I'm gonna stop talking. I don't know what I was trying to say. Maybe teach is the better way. But again, I don't like that because that makes me feel like I'm a better dynasty manager than you guys, and I definitely don't think I am. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I'm a better dynasty manager than a lot of you guys. I think there's just as many people in here that could definitely be on this side of the camera and be providing just as good of content for sure. I feel like a lot of you guys also just like don't trust yourselves. You provide alternate perspectives. There it is. That's it. I want to instill confidence in you guys as dynasty managers to make moves that you feel good about and you have a process about and you understand what's going on. So because it's kind of like my wife went to therapy after it was leading up to Oliver's birth and a little bit after. But one of her therapist basically said that the end result of their sessions should be that my wife doesn't need that therapist anymore. And I remember Morgan telling me that and was just like, yeah, that's what my therapist said. I was like, well, that is true. Like the idea of therapy is that you don't need therapy anymore, that you're not like healed, but like you're able to work through the things yourself and you're able to, be self-dependent. And that's what that I think is what I try to do with Dynasty, to where, not to say that I don't want you guys coming back to consume the content, but I would like to help you guys instill confidence in yourselves and give you guys a process to then, where, not to say that you don't need me, but like, you yourselves are better dynasty managers and fantasy managers for it. That's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, enough about me. Dynasty dumpster fire and 12-2 Superflex PPR start 10. Pickens or DJ Moore and a 26th third. That is George Pickens easily. The third's not enough. I have Pickens well ahead of DJ Moore, and a third is not enough to move off of Pickens. Would you be trying to move off of Brooks in Dynasty now that Hubbard was signed? No, I think that was a bad time to sell off of Jonathan Brooks just because of the Chuba extension. I feel like that just like deflated a lot of Brooks's value, rightfully so. I definitely dropped him down from being a back end RB1 in Dynasty to a back end RB2 in Dynasty. But I don't think now is a good time to sell off of him, because I just don't know what option would you have that is either a better prospect with better odds of producing in 2, 3, 4 years from now at such a young age. It's just like you're either going to trade him for Bucky Irving, who maybe is a little bit more productive now, but was a worse prospect and probably doesn't have the ceiling that Jonathan Brooks has right now, or you're trading him for Tyron Tracy, again, worse prospect, may not even be the starter next year. Also, like 3 or 4 years older than Jonathan Brooks, as crazy as that sounds, as rookies themselves. But Tracy's like 25. Tyron Tracy turns 25 in like 2 or 3 weeks. He's a November birthday. Or you're going to sell him for some 27, 28-year-old who, is probably very productive right now, but again, may not be productive later on in the future. It just doesn't seem like now's a good time to sell Jonathan Brooks. Would you give up 26 first for Joe Mixon? Yes, I would. Yep, I would take Joe Mixon over a 26 first. Him, Monty, B-Rob are kind of like the three guys I think in that kind of older, productive vet range that I would actually sell a first round pick for. I wouldn't do it for Kamara. I wouldn't do it for Henry. So I guess maybe that means that I need to break up that tier from what I had for my running back rankings. But yeah, I would sell a first for those guys. Kyler, for this one, I remember saying that earlier. Is Deontay just dead fantasy wise for at least rest of season? I think rest of season he probably is. Then that could change pretty quickly, but he needs to get like, this is like, Amari Cooper took some time to get integrated in the Bills office. He still is. Devontae Adams took a week or two to get into there. Hopkins took a week or two before he had his big week. So he's also getting integrated into a brand new offense mid-season. He's getting a crash course into that playbook. but also it's not as good of a situation as the other three receivers that I just mentioned. That's why they're also producing really well too. So I think for me, I would view Deontay Johnson as dead, as you just don't have him. Just pretend that he's hurt, essentially. But if he surprises and starts producing, then I'd be quick to change to get back on that. But I would never play him in my starting lineup until I actually see him do something. Whether that's, he's running a bunch of routes, but he's not getting targeted, which might also not be a good thing. Like the usage would be there. He's just not, the production's not there. Maybe he's seeing a bunch of targets, but the production didn't follow. There could be signals to where Deontay gets thrown into my starting lineup before he has like a 15 or 20 point week. But I would say that for probably the best bet is that Deontay doesn't see my lineup until he has a week like this. Like that, like 15, 20 plus points. YWL 12 team Serial Flex half PBR. Give Godwin and a 25 second and a 25 late second. Get Hop, the 201 and the 203. I'm okay with this on both sides. I lean towards the Chris Godwin side because I think Godwin is going to be so much better than DeAndre Hopkins for the next like 2 or 3 years. That I'm okay with my second round picks being like 4, 5, 6 spots later than the 201, 203. But I think if you're competing, I think that this is fine too. You get 2 early seconds. You also get a player that's actually competing or producing right now. Seems like he's going to produce pretty well if he continues having the Rashee Rice role. So I'm fine with this on both sides. If you're really competing, you can go get D-Hop in 2 earlier seconds. If you're not competing, then go get the other side. I still, in a vacuum, lean towards the Chris Godwin side, but I'm fine with it as a contender to go get D-Hop. I made up my mind. Stafford it is. Mom spaghetti. Stafford it is. Stafford it is. Appreciate you here for the memes. Balling at all costs with the $5 super chat. Appreciate you so much, man. Chase Brown in a late 26 first, not yours. For Rome Odunze. 12 team super flex full PBR wide receivers and neighbors. Ladd, Addison, Pearsall, Coker, Tracy, Chase Brown, Bucky, Rashad White. I'm going to make the assumption that based on your wide receivers and running backs that you are not competing. Which I don't know. Your quarterbacks could be really freaking good, and your tight ends could be good too. And if you play the right players every week, you could be good. But I'm going to assume that you're not competing. In which case, do I do this? Value-wise, I think it makes sense. I think value-wise, going to Rome Odunze for Brown in a late 26 first, assuming that it is late, is fine for Rome Odunze. I don't know if it is the most optimal deal because Odunze feels like a player that could be a guy that we're just waiting to kind of break out and maybe isn't like he could just be another Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? Like maybe he has kind of broken out, but he's also not super consistent, not a big help on a weekly basis. So that's kind of like my fear with Rome Odunze right now, to where maybe it would just be better to keep that 26 first and Chase Brown, or trade those guys away for somebody that doesn't have that fear in my head. So who would that be? It would be Jaden Reed is the next guy up from Odunze. So if you could do the same deal, but go get Jaden Reed, I would love that. Rashee Rice is the next guy up from Jaden Reed on keep trade cut. I would smash that so hard to trade Chase Brown in a late first for Rashee Rice. Or are you able to get George Pickens for cheaper? Are you able to get DK Metcalf? Are you able to get Drake London or Garrett Wilson by adding something slightly more on top of that? That's, I feel like there might be a more optimal move with Brown in your late first than just moving over to go get a Odunze. You might be able to go get an actual difference maker who has the ability to produce better, or enter the upper echelon of wide receivers quicker. Odunze just feels like a player that's going to end up being in a tier of wide receivers you'll always be able to get for a first. That kind of feels like how he is too. I agree with you on that one, Ryan. That he just feels like no matter what you do, no matter what he does, he's just going to be worth like a first round pick. So you could take that as, I can make this move now, and if he doesn't if he doesn't break out, I could just flip him for a first later on. I'm fine with that take on it too. But also it could be, maybe I just don't do the Odunze trade right now. Go try to get somebody better, and then I could fall back on Rome Odunze if I need to in, a few weeks or a few months or next season. Because there's nothing wrong with holding on to the 26th first. I'm fine with trading away Chase Brown right now, but I feel like the value could be a lot higher, especially if he continues to produce over the remainder of the year, that he could be worth a lot more to a contender who wants him than just paying him and a first for Rome Odunze. Appreciate the $5 super chat, man. Hopefully that helped you out. I think there might just be something better than Rome Odunze that you can get. If it's Rashee Rice, I need to calm down on my Rashee Rice love. Maybe no, I don't. Tracks in order how you would start: Marv, Terry, Tracy, B-Rob, Bucky, Nico if he plays and if he's on a snap count. Wow, so I would go B-Rob. Hold on a second. Because they get the Steelers defense, and that's okay. I'll go Marv. I think is number one, then B-Rob. No, Marv, then Tracy, then B-Rob, then McLaurin, then Bucky. Nico, I'm a little worried on. I don't know if he plays. I'm going to act as if he's not playing right now because they just designated him to return from IR. He hasn't practiced all week. I'd be shocked if they play him without practicing all week. So I think for me, Marv is number one. Paulson's rankings, Marv is flex 59. McLaurin is flex 41. So he has McLaurin. He strongly agrees with me because I know he's going to have Tracy a lot higher. Tracy's flex 16. Robinson is flex, not Bijan, not Wandale, not DeMarcus. He doesn't have Brian Robinson in here. He might not even play. That's a good point. Bucky is flex 61. So Paulson would say to go Tracy, McLaurin, Marv, Bucky. Right? Is that what I said? Marv. Yeah, Marv is ahead of Bucky. I'm on board with it. I'm on board with Tyron and Tracy. I think that Marv just has some more upside against the Jets than maybe people think that he does. And McLaurin is going to get the Steelers defense, and so is B-Rob if he plays. Like McLaurin might get shut down by Joey Porter Jr. Hopefully he gets shut down by Joey Porter Jr. So I think that Marv has higher upside, even though he's going to play Sauce, but I think that he has higher upside because Sauce hasn't necessarily been that great this year. Tracy, I'm fine with as the first start against the Panthers. So yeah, I'm good with that. Tracy, then for me it would be Marv, then B-Rob if he plays, then Terry, then Nico. I don't think Nico's playing. What is the value of Chris Godwin at this point? I'm rebuilding and wondering if I should hold on to Godwin or trade him for picks or a younger receiver. I don't know if you're going to be able to get a worthwhile deal for for Chris Godwin as a rebuilder right now, just because the one thing that he was good at, which was scoring points, he's no longer able to do that because he's hurt. And so contenders don't really want him. And I don't think other rebuilders necessarily want him either. If you look on KTC, his value's fallen to wide receiver 38. Like he's right next to Michael Pittman. He's next to Xavier Legette. I don't think that the contenders in your team want him, and I don't think the other rebuilders in your team necessarily want him. So he might just be more valuable for you to hold on to unless you're able to get somebody like I'd be fine with like Leggett for Chris Godwin. I wouldn't trade him for just a second or 2 seconds. I'd hold on to him still at that point. So I think my final answer is it's probably not worth trading Chris Godwin if you already have him as a rebuilder. I'd rather wait and see maybe if he returns to production next year, and then his value can go back up from that. It won't go up significantly from that, but I think it at least makes him more marketable to where you could get a better upside shot, or maybe you could trade him for whoever next year's injured wide receiver is, like Brandon Ayuk, or the underproducing wide receiver like Jalen Waddle. Next year, it might be easier to do that with Chris Godwin when he's actually competing. Which team would you like to see T. Higgins on next year? I'm thinking Commanders would be nice, but hoping not the Panthers. Anything but the Panthers would be great. I want him in New England, actually. I want him to be the wide receiver 1 with Drake May. Commanders, I think, would be fun. Chargers would be fun, I think, too. But I'm hoping for New England because I think that he'd have a good quarterback with Drake May, and he'd get a lot of targets. So that's like right there. It would be like Malik Neighbors' situation, but with a good quarterback is what I'm hoping for with T. Higgins in New England next year. I got to go so much faster through these questions. I've said that probably about 4 times already. I need a running back to be my backup. I already have JT and B-Rob. What could I get for Tillman? I'm a contender now, seed number 2. You could probably, for Tillman right now, probably get somebody like a Rachaad White. You might be able to get James Conner. That's like high end. I feel like that's like best case scenario for Tillman right now. Where's Tillman in? Yeah, Ramondre. Apparently, Tillman's ahead of Rachaad White on KTC, so that's good. ETN's there, Ramondre is there, Aaron Jones, James Conner, Tony Pollard. Those are probably the names of running backs that you'd be looking for with Cedric Tillman. Which I'm fine trading off of him. If you're good at wide receiver, I'm fine trading off of him for a running back to help you compete. One that you would actually start probably more than Tillman if you're that good at wide receiver. Would you start Caleb over Stafford this week? No, I'd play Stafford. Oh, Will, this is we're just. Did I miss this? Yeah. Allen, Caleb, Saquon, Connor, Swift. Nice team so far. You definitely need wide receivers, especially if Higgins is going to continue to be out. Where was that? Go up, go up, go up. I'm trying to find the first message. I'm too high. I just saw it. Where'd it go? There it is. You're in first place. You have a 25 and 226 firsts, no seconds or thirds. You need a wide receiver. So if you can trade I'm fine with trading a first round pick if you can get DK Metcalf, or maybe you can get London for that first round pick. I want a guy. I don't want to trade that first for like Kupp or Adams or somebody like that, or even like a Deebo Samuel or anything. That first round pick needs to be, Metcalf or London, like I said, or if it ends up, maybe it's Zay Flowers, maybe it's George Pickens. But I think that's your next move on that one. Upgrading off of Kincaid might be fun too. Like if you can move Kincaid and Dobbs for, I don't know, or Kincaid and Judy maybe for now. I'm trying to think, how do you move from Kincaid up to, or maybe you move Kincaid to Mark Andrews? That would be fun. Can you get Andrews plus for Dalton Kincaid? I bet you they'd be willing to do that. That's what I'd probably be looking at, Will, is how can you use that first for a young wide receiver that's producing, And then maybe see if you can upgrade Dalton Kincaid over to Mark Andrews, or see if you can get to you'd have to add something to get to McBride, but I feel like it might be worth it. Flowers lad and the 210 and 2/3 for Marvin Harrison Jr. Man, I just wish Marv was better. Can you do this exact same deal, but instead of Marvin Harrison Jr., are you able to get Puka or Nico? If you could do this same deal, but you get Puka or Nico, I'd feel so much better about it. So I think as of right now, I'm going to say no to MHJ, but I think that there are other receivers in the Marvin Harrison Jr. value range that you could probably get this for. If it's Nico, that's a easy smash. Take Nico for that, but I'd do it for Puka too. Have Stroud, May, and Smith, and I don't want to draft a quarterback this year if I don't have to, but value is value. Knowing his past production, how the team views him, he would be a good stash. I don't remember what this was in regards to. I'm sorry. Has everyone hit the like button? We appreciate Addison taking his time with advice. Return the favor for him. Appreciate you, Jamie. And appreciate everybody who hits that like button, man. Would you prefer Mahomes and McLaurin or Purdy and Amon-Ra in a 10-team Dynasty Superflex? I would prefer Purdy and Amon-Ra. Honestly, at this point, Amon-Ra might be worth more than Patrick Mahomes. I think they're at least more. They're very equal, but I would take Brock Purdy over Terry McLaurin. So give me Purdy and Amon-Ra in this one. Dynasty 12-team start 2 tight end league. Sell Kittle for Kincaid straight up. As a rebuilder, I would take Kincaid. Maybe you can squeak a little something extra on top, like a third or something like that. I traded away Tyreek for B-Rob and Jaden Reed. My second RB is Javonte Williams. I think that's fine. If this is Dynasty, this is more than fine. In redraft, I think this is okay. I wish Jaden Reed was more consistent. He's been kind of annoying. Hey, bro, 4-5 on a 3-win streak. Nice. I traded Gibbs, Chase Brown for Puka, Swift, Pacheco. What do you think? I don't know if I'm in love with it. I really... If this is Dynasty, it's fine. If it's redraft, I don't know if I like it. The issue is that Swift's schedule after this week is like really rough. And I don't think Pacheco is going to help you at all for the remainder of the year. So then if it's kind of like Gibbs for Puka, which is all right. But I think Gibbs is probably going to outproduce Puka. I don't know. From a Dynasty standpoint, I don't mind it. From a redraft standpoint, I don't like it. So that's the difference between the two. Trade away Puka or Cup. Oh, Blue, I'm so sorry. I don't remember this one. I've answered way too many questions. Oh, it was Sam Howell. I retyped the question. I also don't remember that one either. There's been too many questions and I've been going for almost 2 hours and my brain is starting to get fried. Cat for life, what's up, man? Dolphin. My league is about to go to Superflex. My quarterbacks are Mahomes, Daniels, McCarthy, and Fields. Am I set at quarterback next year so I can pursue wide receivers and running backs in the draft or go after someone like Lawrence? I think you're set. I think that, you could optimize it, but maybe Mahomes isn't the best quarterback to have, but Daniels is great. McCarthy hopefully gets the job next year. I think you are set at quarterback. And even if you're not, I think that you have the value pieces in your quarterback room right now to make a move to get to be more ideal. And by more ideal, I mean like maybe instead of Patrick Mahomes, if he's not going to produce like a QB1, maybe you can move off of him and go get Joe Burrow or CJ Stroud or Jordan Love, or if Theo would have his way, it would be Drake May. But I think you can do that pretty easily with Mahomes if you don't like Mahomes. But I like Mahomes, so I'm good with it. McMillan or Robinson or Tolbert? I'm hearing Lamb is trending doubtful. Is that true? From what I've heard as well, I think it was kind of like a pain tolerance thing with CeeDee Lamb. Where are we at? CeeDee Lamb is getting right. That's from half an hour ago from Yahoo Sports. CeeDee Lamb aiming to play through the shoulder injury. He finished the game and has been limited in practice, but he's progressed enough where he feels confident that he will be on the field against the Eagles. I feel like I've taken a big step throughout the week in these last 2 or 3 days, but I'm good. I was out there running today. I was getting right. Lamb might play. If McMillan plays, I'd play McMillan over all these guys. If Lamb doesn't play, then I'd play Tolbert. Mike, good afternoon, Addison. Good afternoon to you. What do I do with Xavier Worthy? I'm worried that he could be the next Mecole Hardman, but his trade value has to be in the tank right now after that last game. So I had another conversation in the comment section of another video about Xavier Worthy. Basically, that if you could trade him for a first-round pick right now in 2025 or even 2026, I'm totally fine with that. Just re-roll the dice, because I don't think that Worthy is going to get to a point to where this is like the best situation that he might ever have. I shouldn't say ever have, but this is the best situation that Worthy will probably have on the Chiefs for the next couple of years. Because next year, Rice will probably be back. Rice will be back. Pacheco will probably be back. Kelsey may or may not retire, but maybe they replace him with somebody like that, some other tight end or a free agent or a rookie or something like that. To where if he's not getting the production now without Rashee Rice, he didn't do it without Juju. He didn't do it when Hopkins was still fresh onto the team. Then he got outproduced by DeAndre Hopkins. I just don't know when it would work for Xavier Worthy. So I want a first-round pick. If you're not getting it first, I want to hold on to Xavier Worthy if you're not getting a first-round pick, because of the nature of the type of player that he is. All he needs is that one game. If he has one game where he catches 2 long ball touchdowns, that's going to infuse a bunch of confidence back into people for Worthy, and that would then be the time to sell. So I'm fine with the opportunity cost of Worthy's value continuing to plummet if you're only getting offered like a second or 2 seconds or a second in some kind of meh wide receiver, and you're not getting a first-round pick. I'm fine on the opportunity cost of him getting worse and missing out on having seconds, then you're only getting thirds for him, for the upside that he has one game, and then you get a first-round pick for him. So, yeah, I'm in agreement. I've been worried about Xavier Worthy for about 4 or 5 weeks now. I forget which Dynasty lesson learned video it was, but it was very early on in the year. It was like week 4 or 5 that we started to have this conversation. Or use him to tier up somewhere. Ryan, that's another fantastic suggestion. Worthy and a second can go get, Waddle or Pickens or somebody like that. JMO 2.0. That's essentially what he is. That's essentially it. And it sucks. Another lesson learned. Watch my rookie videos and watch which players, because now I now have the red flag. I have the red flag like data point, and it's the red flag data point. If you have multiple red flags on your prospect profile, there's probably been there's only been one wide receiver that has had sustained fantasy production, and that was Jalen Waddle with multiple red flags. But Waddle's multiple red flags, I think, were due to the fact that he got hurt in his final year in college. Worthy had multiple red flags and is not doing well. So pay attention to the red flag one when we get into 2025. I think McConkey had multiple red flags too, so maybe it's a 50%, but it's not indicative of very good things. And not to say that prospects that don't have red flags all go on to be great. I'm just saying, usually if you have those red flags, it's indicative of a lack of something somewhere. And Xavier Worthy had them. He had multiple ones. Where are we at? Redraft, should I trade AJ Brown for Nico? I'd probably just hold on to AJ Brown. As long as the injury isn't serious, which I don't think it has been. I'm fine taking Nico Collins too, but I don't really see the point. I'd probably just hold on to AJ Brown unless we hear something gets worse with that injury. Would you trade Kyler, Dortch, and Polk for Baker and Higgins, or if he doesn't accept that, Kyler and Dortch for Baker and Mooney? I would take Baker and Higgins. I would not do Baker and Mooney. Nah. Yeah, I would do Baker and Mooney. I really want Baker and Higgins, though. Absolutely. But I would do Baker and Mooney. Have May, Stroud, Geno contending rebuild. I'd like to use my first for running back. What do you think about stashing Sam Howell, given his past production and the Seahawks' overall view of him? I'm fine with stashing Sam Howell. I think that he's definitely better than a lot of other players you can get off the waiver wire. Like he'd be better to have than like Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew or some other backups in the league. So yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with stashing him, especially if you have Geno. He's probably the one. Sam Howell is probably most valuable to you than everybody else on in your league. So yeah, I'm fine stashing him. Would you trade Jake May for Dak and Devonta Smith, or possibly May for Achane? I have Love, Hurts, Stafford, 10-team 2 quarterback. I would do the Dak and Devonta Smith one. I don't know if I would trade May for Achane. Achane's production is fantastic, but that's quarterback for a running back. I don't really like it. I would do Dak and Devonta Smith because then you get Devonta Smith. You still have another quarterback 4 in Dak, and you're good to go. Yep, Dak and Devonta Smith. What's the long-term outlook on Sam Darnold on Superflex? You are hoping that, honestly, for me, I'm hoping that Sam Darnold stays in Minnesota. I don't know if he will. He might have priced himself out of it in the free agency market next year, but I hope that for Sam Darnold's sake, this is not like anti-JJ McCarthy, but like if you have Sam Darnold, I think that you're hoping that he stays in Minnesota because the situation is so perfect for him. I think if he signs somewhere else, I think that the situation won't be as great for him. And I don't know if he's as talented as what he's playing as right now. I think he's being bolstered a lot by O'Connell, by Justin Jefferson, by Jordan Addison. Now he's got Hawkinson back. I don't know if there's going to be another situation out there right now where the coaching staff is as good, where the weapons are as good, and the offensive line is as good. So I think for Sam Darnold, you're hoping that he stays in Minnesota. I don't know how much longer he would be a starter if he was not in Minnesota. So it's kind of like Darnold's a tough case right now. I feel like I'd want to use him to upgrade. I don't want to like side grade off of him because he's been very productive and there is the upside shot that he stays in Minnesota. But again, if you can use him to move to Dak, to move to Goff, or to move up to Baker would be fantastic. Move to Brock Purdy. I think that there's just more security with those guys and possibly more production too than with Sam Darnold. What would you give up for Downs, rebuilder, put him on the block? First down bonuses, big play bonuses, but juice scoring for running back, tight end, and quarterback, so wide receivers are devalued. So I'd pay a second. I wouldn't really want to pay anything really more than a second. Second and third's fine. I'm not paying a first for him, absolutely. Absolutely not paying a first. But a second, I think, for Downs is good. Or a second and something. That's about it for Downs. Trade Amari Cooper for James Conner. Yep, I'll take James Conner in that one. Easy question. Appreciate you, C-Mac. Sorry I didn't spend a lot of time on that, but that's an easy one. James Conner. Just probably lost Trevor for the season as contender in Superflex, 2 firsts, one of them being a top 325 pick. Too much to trade for Drake May. No, I would trade a top 3 2025 pick for Drake May. Drake May is a better quarterback than every quarterback in next year's class. So, yeah, give me Drake May. Is the T-Law injury bad? Didn't realize he might be out for the year. I've been seeing surgery has been popped up multiple times for Trevor Lawrence. Unlikely to play versus the Vikings as he weighs options for injured shoulder. And surgery is on the table. That is according to Ian Rappaport. There's no surgery scheduled now, but it's one of the options. So that's one of the fear with Lawrence's injury. Thinking about trading with a contender that they've showed interest in St. Brown. So here's what I'm thinking. I receive Mahomes and Garrett Wilson. I send St. Brown, Zach Moss, Chase Brown, and maybe a 201. I mean, if you can get that deal, like I kind of said a little bit earlier, like St. Brown and Mahomes are kind of similar, but I am very easily taking Garrett Wilson over Chase Brown, Zach Moss in a second. So yeah, that's an easy deal. If you can get that done, that's very, very easy. Should I ride with Baker, Herb, and May for the rest of the season as a 1 seed and most points scored in one quarterback, or should I try to acquire someone else like Hurts? I had Baker Mayfield as a trade target on the 4 for 4 YouTube channel that dropped on Wednesday. The reason being his schedule is phenomenal, and he'll get Mike Evans back in like a week or two. So I'm totally fine riding out Baker Mayfield as your every week starter for the remainder of the year. I don't think you need to acquire anybody else. No PPR, start Waddle or Cooper. I would start Jalen Waddle, even if Amari Cooper plays. Traded Brooks for Najee in a 25 first last week. You didn't like it last week, but with the Chuba extension, does it change? It definitely is a lot better now. I still don't know if I'm in love with it, just because the upside of Brooks, man. But yeah, I think getting a first and something now is not something that would be possible with Jonathan Brooks. So I definitely like it a lot better. Now trying to flip Najee for a first or a wide receiver, that would be, if you can get a first for Najee, that's fantastic. I definitely like it a lot more now, Philip. How quickly things change when one organization makes a dumb decision. I'm in my 14 team, one quarterback tight end premium league, full IDP, start 1, 3, 1, 2. I have Herbert, May, Neighbors, Rice, Ayuk. Wow. Pearsall and Pitts, no running backs at all, 320, 25 seconds. Can I compete next year? I'm not going to say you won't be able to. I think you're going to need to probably hit on one or two guys either in the rookie class or make one or two good trades, especially if you don't have any running backs at all. But I think the fact that you have Herbert and May, I think, are pretty solid in terms of one quarterback leagues. Neighbors, Rice, I think, will be great. Ayuk hopefully comes back and produces next year. Pitts is your tight end is solid. If you just need the fact that you only need to start one running back is great. You can just get like one guy. Like you could get like it might not be James Conner next year, but somebody like James Conner, somebody like Aaron Jones, somebody, if you get one of those guys to kind of hammer down your one RB spot, then you fill in the back end and maybe you hit on a Chase Brown, a kind of guy, a Jordan Mason kind of guy, a Kareem Hunt kind of guy. Whoever those guys end up being next year, I think then you can compete. So I wouldn't push your chips in and be like, yeah, I'm coming out of my rebuild. I'm going to compete in 2025. Let your team tell you if they're ready to compete next year. But just continue to make dynasty moves, continue to make moves as if you're playing for 2026, 2027. And if your team tells you it's ready to compete in 2025, when you're 4-1 through the first 5 weeks, start making moves to continue competing. Appreciate the content, Addison. Appreciate you, Brian. Who's your favorite wide receiver targets for a contender? I have a mid-first rounder to pay. DK Metcalf, Drake London. With a mid-first, I think you might be able to get Pickens plus for it. You might be able to get Jaden Reed plus for it. Honestly, as a contender, if you're just looking for an extra wide receiver, my favorite wide receiver targets would be the ones that don't cost a first-round pick. So that could be as cheap as Cedric Tillman, as cheap as Jacoby Myers. It could be. I need more names. Cortland Sutton. It could be. Maybe it's DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe it's. Jerry Jeudy is doing fine as well. Guys that are significantly cheaper because they're either older, they don't have the sex appeal for their names. Who else is down in here? That's probably about it. Those kind of guys, like if you had like a free extra second, would legitimately be my favorite targets. But yeah, if you're paying a mid first round pick, I'm looking at Metcalf would be like number one. I would look at Drake London. I would look at Pickens plus. I would look at T. Higgins plus. I would look at Jalen Waddle plus. Tank Dell plus. All of those wide receivers would be who I'd be going after. Allen Lamar, Henry Tracy, Mason, Tank, Wilson T, Ridley, Leggett, Coleman, Andrews. In first, points for as well, but don't know how. Lineup feels gross. Split Henry, Swift and Chubb, or Terry and ETN are on the table. First in points for, but don't know how. I love that. I know how. You have Allen, Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Garrett Wilson. And Andrews is coming up now. And you had Mason at the beginning of the year. I'm not opposed to the Derrick Henry split. I just don't know if I like the splits that you mentioned here. I mean, I'm fine with. I would probably split Derrick Henry into like James Conner and I don't even know who the actual James Conner and Darnell Mooney, James Conner and Mike Evans, James Conner and Deebo Samuel. I don't know. Can you even get that? Is that even possible? Or Aaron Jones, like Aaron Jones, somebody like that, like somebody like Aaron Jones, somebody like James Conner, somebody like even Ramondre, I don't think is necessarily the worst thing in the world. But also Derrick Henry's been such a hammer for you that you might just want to keep him and just see what happens. Because Andrews is coming on. Lamar and Allen are obviously fantastic. You're beating every other team in terms of quarterbacks every week with that. Garrett Wilson's been good. I don't know what other picks you have, but maybe at the wide receiver spot, maybe you go after somebody like a Jacoby Myers or like a Cedric Tillman or somebody that can spot start in for the wide receiver spot while T. Higgins is hurt, or maybe while you don't trust Leggett while Coleman is hurt right now. Maybe you don't trust Ridley. Somebody else at the wide receiver spot could fill in nicely if you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for him. I don't mind the Terry and ETN one. I just don't know if ETN really helps you. But Terry and somebody, or like a receiver like Terry, like if it's Tank Dell and James Conner, I'd like that. But I don't know if you get that for Derrick Henry. Like the process, don't know if I like the current options that we have right now, though. 1 PPR, 2 PPR for tight end. Start one between CD, London, and Ingram. Oh. I think I'll start Lamb still. I don't like Ingram without Lawrence. I'll go with CD Lamb, even with Cooper Rush. I'll go Lamb. So should I? Yes, CD Lamb. I'm not even going to read it because I read it in my head before I read it out loud. CD Lamb. In Dynasty, this is CD Lamb very easily. In redraft, if this is redraft, I want Cade Otton and Deebo Samuel. So I'll have that caveat. In Dynasty, this is CD Lamb. In redraft, this is Otton and Deebo. What would you do with players like JMO and Tracy? I like both, but torn on if I should hold or sell. Jameson Williams, I would have been selling for weeks now. Tracy, I think is fine to hold on to. I also think that he's fine to sell. I think it really is just price dependent on both of these guys. Like if you're somehow getting a first round pick for Tyrone Tracy, that's a sell. If you're getting a second round pick for Tracy, maybe just hold on to Tracy. JMO, I think would be. I'd love to see if I could use him to upgrade somewhere, like Xavier Worthy. But I just don't. He still carries name value, and I think people still remember what he did in the first couple weeks of the year, but he hasn't done that since. So I would love to trade JMO for a couple of seconds. Don't know if you're getting that though, but yeah, a couple seconds for JMO, a first for Tracy. That's the sell point for both those guys. Anything less than that probably isn't worth trading on. I would like to trade JMO though. Do you feel like this wide receiver core has enough depth and potential for it not to be upgraded for at least 2 years? Lamb, Nico, DJ Moore. No. Lamb and Nico are great. Those two at the top, fantastic. Everybody after DJ Moore, first of all, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those guys might be largely irrelevant in Mitchell, Roman Wilson, Yoshi, and Coker. Yoshi is bad. Yoshi might be a waiver wire piece in Dynasty. Coker, I have no idea what he is. He was a waiver wire piece, might be a waiver wire piece in 3 months again. Roman Wilson, I don't believe that he was a good prospect, but we haven't seen him play yet. Mitchell can't do anything. So no, I don't believe that your wide receiver room is good enough or deep enough. I'd be working on it hardcore. DJ Moore being your wide receiver 3, I think is fine in most scenarios, but he's also not producing either. And in a year or two might still not be producing. Shakir, I don't know what he is. He's not a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. They obviously addressed that by drafting Keon Coleman and by trading for Amari Cooper. Odunze, you're just waiting out too. It's Lamb and Nico, and then it's just a bunch of massive question marks. So no, I don't think that you are deep enough or have enough potential to not touch this receiver room. Jack says Hall, Cook, B-Rob, Tracy, Irving. Do I use a running back and wide receiver picks to upgrade to a better running back, or am I fine with the running back room that I have? Right now, 5 and 4, they stack wide receiver cores, just underperforming games. Honestly, I like the running back room that you have. Hall's great. Cook is a top 10 guy. B-Rob is top 15 when he plays. Tracy's been coming on really strong. Bucky Irving's producing well. I don't know what you would use these guys to then upgrade to. You could upgrade off of Tracy maybe to at least get some more stability in terms of longevity. I'd like to say that Tyron Tracy's the starter next year. I'd bet on it, but I don't know if he is. Day 3 running backs are so hit or miss. Like he could be Dameon Pierce and that could suck. You know, I think he's better than Dameon Pierce for the record. But I don't know maybe what you're upgrading to. Tyron Tracy and something for David Montgomery. B-Rob and something for Kenneth Walker. Tracy and something for Kenneth Walker. B-Rob and something for Achane. I think there's options, but I think it just depends on what the wide receiver or the pick is that you use to upgrade. So I think that is more the answer to this question is what are you giving up and for what running back? I don't think you have to make a move. I wouldn't be desperate to make a move, but if one came along, I'm not opposed to it. Oh, that's Chuba, not Chubb. I still don't think I'm in love with it. Thoughts on Chuba with the extension? I wish I could say that something changed in my opinion, but I just firmly believe that Jonathan Brooks is so much better. Maybe it just added a little bit of that. I don't think that he's just going to completely go away, but I also think that Carolina is just an idiot franchise for extending him. Not anti-Chuba, but it's just that was such a dumb move NFL wise. Chuba, I think he's fine. He's not a top 30 running back still with the extension. Because I just don't know. He just is. He's just there. I don't have a good answer for that. Despite my best efforts to steer into a 1-year retool, I'm likely going to make the playoffs. It's not the worst thing in the world. My running back room sucks. Pollard and ETN. Do I go try and buy some affordable running backs or let it ride? If you could, now, the answer depends on what running backs are even available for you to buy, because I could list off a lot of running back targets for you, but a lot of them are probably going to also be on actual contending teams that aren't going to want to sell to you as another contender, like James Conner or like Aaron Jones. So you got to identify which running backs are on the rebuilding teams right now that you can even afford to buy, and then try to piece that together. So if guys like Ramondre Stevenson are on a rebuilding team, can you buy Ramondre Stevenson for a second? Can you buy Rashad White for a second, Javonte for a second. Even some of those guys, it just doesn't feel good to go out and buy. But that's the other option would then just be, can you try to pick up some extra handcuffs in, if you're already dealing already, can you pick up an extra handcuff or two and then see maybe if you come across a diamond in the rough there. Jacob Swift, Jones, Connor, Cook, Najee would be possible options. I mean, I would love to go get Jacob still. Jones and Connor, I think, would be good to be cheaper. Cook might be a little bit too expensive. You're probably going to pay a first for it. Najee's fine. I don't like Swift. His rest of season schedule is rough. If you can get Jacobs, Jones, or Connor for seconds, I would love that. If you somehow have 2 seconds and you just want to go buy 2 of those guys, I'm totally fine with that. Or if you just want to push your chips in on one of those guys, just say, I'll spend a second and a third on Jacobs and I'm done. Or I'll spend a second and a third on Connor and I'm done. Those would be the top 2 that I would go after. I think Cook is probably a little bit out of your price range, to where if you're still trying to retool, or you thought maybe that you were retooling, so you have some other pieces that you probably don't want to touch, like first rounders and stuff, then maybe Cook isn't the answer. But yeah, the lower price running backs like Jacobs, Connor, Jones would be Najee, I think would be good targets if you can get them for seconds. With my league going to Superflex next year, Danny Dimes is on the waiver wire. Is he worth picking up and stashing for next year? I think he's worth stashing. If you have the extra roster spot, I definitely think that he's worth stashing, because I think there is an off chance that he's still the starter next year. I know that sounds like horrible, but there is a chance. As of right now, the Giants have the 7th overall pick, but they are tied for the worst record in the league, so with 6 other teams. So that's why they have the 7th pick. So, depending on how they do and how, Jacksonville does, how New England does, how, New England, I guess, wouldn't draft another quarterback, but like how Carolina's probably going to still be ahead of them. They'll probably draft somebody. Cleveland might draft somebody. Vegas might draft somebody. If those 3 teams are ahead of the Giants might still go to Daniel Jones, and maybe they draft somebody in like the 2nd round or something like that. But I think that means that Daniel Jones is still the starter for the beginning of the year until the other guy's like ready to go. So I'm fine stashing him. If you have the extra roster spot, throw Danny Dimes on the waivers, or off of waivers. Najee does have a tough schedule too. Yeah. So that's why, like, my 3 options for you chasing breakers are Jacobs, Connor, Jones, in that order. I'm fine buying Najee. He does have a tough schedule. I like Najee more than DeAndre Swift. But yes, Najee does have a tough schedule too. I should have mentioned that. Appreciate you, Ryan. Did you see about Hurts? There's a chance it could be Pickett versus Rush. What did Jalen Hurts do? Accidentally revealed that Jalen Hurts is dealing with an ankle injury? Oh, no. Huh. Way to go, Nick Sirianni. I just read the little press. They had like a little press thing where it's like, yeah, why was he not practicing? He was like, oh, he was on the injury report with an ankle injury. And the reporter was like, Jalen Hurts was not on the injury report. He was like, oh, you're talking about Jalen? No. I think Jalen Hurts plays this week. Jamar Chase or Jaden Reed and 3 firsts. Jamar Chase. Still Jamar Chase for me. Hopefully Matt can feed BTJ. That would be fantastic. Where are you at on Waddle these days? What would you add to DJ Moore to get him? I'd add a 3rd to DJ Moore. I would add a 2nd to DJ Moore, a late 2nd, but I'd feel like you don't have to. I definitely want Waddle over DJ Moore, though. because I just think that he's so much better than what he's been producing this year. A large portion of that is because he was without Tua. And then even when Tua's been back, Tyreek hasn't been good. I mean, he's been better, but he hasn't been overly great. And Waddle's also not great. So I still just feel like Waddle is such a buy low right now just because he's not producing to the level that we know that he can do in this offense. We saw it 3 years in a row. So, yeah, swap DJ Moore for Jalen Waddle. 100%. Earlier question was 2 firsts for May, with one of them being a top 3, not just the one pick. Oh, okay. My bad. My bad, Mike. So that changes my answer then. I would keep the 2 firsts for Drake May, if even with one of them being a top 3 pick. If it was just the top 3 pick, then I would take Drake May. If it was a top 3 pick and a second, I would take Drake May. But a top 3 pick and another first, I think I would just keep the first round picks. So sorry for not getting that the first time. Thank you for your patience and understanding and with me. But glad we can get there. In redraft, would you trade away Ladd for Jameson Williams and Kareem Hunt? My running backs are Bijan and White, or is Kareem Hunt being dust in 3 weeks not worth it? My issue with this would be JMO. I think this would actually be a better deal if it was Ladd for Kareem Hunt. The reason being would be because you'd have to drop somebody to put Jameson Williams on your roster. And I don't think Jameson Williams is worth rostering in redraft right now. So I think this would actually be a stronger deal if it was just Ladd for Kareem Hunt. Or if you could change Jameson Williams into somebody that is actually worth holding on to. But would I trade Ladd for Kareem Hunt? I think I would if your wide receivers are good. If Ladd is on your bench, I would trade Ladd away for 2 to 3 weeks of Kareem Hunt. If Ladd is just sitting on your bench and you can't start him. So it sounds funny that the deal would actually be better. It would be stronger if Jameson Williams wasn't part of this deal. Dynasty wise, how far apart is Brown and BTJ? Also, who do you prefer long term? Brown is in tier 1 and BTJ is in tier 3. And they are probably a late first round pick separates the two of them. Not a random pick, but a late pick, or like a 26 or 27 first probably separates the two of them. AJ Brown is just such a monster, and BTJ has been very good, but it's AJ Brown, man. And like AJ Brown is at an alpha level right now that BTJ can only hope to get to at any point in his career. I think he can get to that point, but he needs to get to that point to be valued up to with AJ Brown. So that's why I think I would pay a late first with BTJ to move up to get AJ Brown as a contender. And I prefer AJ Brown long term. I might have missed it, but how do you think CD does with Cooper Rush? In 5 games played with Cooper Rush back in 2022, CD Lamb was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, averaging 16.5 fantasy points per game. So that's how I think that Lamb will do with Cooper Rush. He's the obvious wide receiver 1. They don't have any run game. They're going to have to throw. CeeDee Lamb's going to get targeted a whole bunch. He's basically going to be Malik Neighbors with Daniel Jones. Except I think CeeDee Lamb is better than Malik Neighbors. Not by much, but slightly. Cooper Rush might be better than Daniel Jones. That might be a legitimate argument. So I think that just because on pure volume alone, CeeDee Lamb, I think, is going to get it done. The touchdowns probably won't be there, but 8 or 9 receptions for 80 or 90 yards is 16 plus fantasy points a game, just on pure PPR volume alone. So that's kind of like my expectation with CeeDee Lamb. He might have 1 or 2 rough games where maybe he has like 4 catches for 30 yards, 35 yards. But I think there's going to be just as many other games where he has, 7, 8, 9 catches for 80, 90 yards for those yards. Maybe he scores a touchdown. I think he'll be solid. I think I don't think he'll be consistent weekly wide receiver 1, but a solid wide receiver 2. Oop, let's kick this wire down. With wide receiver 1 upside. Oliver. Evening, Addison. Uh-oh. Is it Oliver, are you international? Are you joining us from across the pond? I'm just curious. I'm sorry. UK based. What's good, man? I feel like did I know? Have you joined this before? And you've told me that you're UK based? I know we've had some other people from Germany and stuff like that. I think I've even had a couple Australians before. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. I think it's just fun whenever people watch from outside the United States. I think I have, yeah. Yeah, I think you have too. But appreciate you, Oliver. Just traded Marvin a late second for AJ Brown and a late first in a single quarterback 10 team. You're good, right? Yeah, you're definitely good, man. I think you got the better player on both sides. I would take AJ Brown over Marvin Harrison Jr. and I would take a first over a second. You won on both accounts. Don't know how you did it. Kind of know how you did it because it's Marvin Harrison Jr. But no, this is very easily AJ Brown in a late first. Well done, man. Well done. Good show. That was terrible. I'm sorry. That was bad. Chris got offered Laporta for Cade Otton. Both are contenders. I'm okay with it. Because I think that Otton is going to outproduce Laporta, and then there's the upside of Otton. I just don't know what Otton's going to look like when Mike Evans comes back, and then when Godwin's back next year. But he could be in the same situation when those guys come back as what Sam Laporta is in right now, where Laporta can't get as many targets because the team is so run heavy. And when they do throw, they throw a lot to Amon-Ra. They throw a couple to Jameson Williams. They have dump offs to Jahmyr Gibbs. Khalif Raymond has been getting involved, or at least got involved that 1 week. That maybe Laporta and Otton are not all that dissimilar to where maybe you just want Otton's production now. I understand that argument. I'm okay with that argument to where I would take Cade Otton. So I'd like something attached. I'd like if this was Cade Otton and a third, just pay up for Sam Laporta a little bit. And I'll take Cade Otton. Then I would be I'd be much more comfortable with this. But if you want the production of Cade Otton right now and you're willing to give up a little bit of the name of Sam Laporta, I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with keeping Sam Laporta. I did not give you a very straight answer, Chris. I'm so sorry. Definitely a hard call. Thanks. Yeah. If this, like I said, if you're trading away Laporta for Otton plus a third or plus a handcuff running back, like if you're able to throw in, let me look. If they're able to add in like a Devin Singletary type of player or a Ty Chandler type of player or a Khalil Herbert, a Audric Estime, a Marshawn Lloyd, somebody like that, just to make you say yes, then I would do it. Offense then was better. It was because they actually had a run game. So it's kind of like the give and take of like, if the offense was better, then maybe they were able to sustain drives more, and that led to more volume for CeeDee Lamb, versus now their offense isn't as good, but CeeDee Lamb is very much the driving factor. So he might get hyper-targeted, but he also might get more defensive attention. Maybe it's not 16.5 fantasy points per game like we did with Cooper Rush earlier, but I think Rush is a competent enough quarterback that Lamb is going to get hyper-targeted, and he's going to do well off that basis. So again, like that's where like not a weekly consistent wide receiver 1, but a solid wide receiver 2 with weekly wide receiver 1 upside. Is Nico a must start this week? I don't think he's a must start. I also don't just think. Bleh, I also don't think that he plays. I'd be very shocked if Nico ends up playing. Have we gotten any more news over the past couple hours since I've been on this? They designated him to return, but they opened the 21-day practice window for Nico Collins. That's what shocks me. I would be surprised if Nico Collins actually played this week after not practicing at all week. I'd be shocked. So I don't think he's playing. So no, he's not a must start because he's probably not playing. All right. It is 2:30 Eastern time. I think this might be the longest AMA I've done in a long time, maybe even ever, outside of like the old DLF. What was that show? Ask DLF with Cal and Tyler. Those went for like 3-4 hours. That's way too much, man. 2.5 hours is a good cap for me. This is where we're going to end it. So I appreciate everybody for hanging out. If you've been hanging out for the past 2.5 hours, holy crap. I appreciate the crap out of all of you. Roshan or Benson this week, Jamie? Man, you are in trouble. Roshan. Yeah, but all right. Appreciate everybody for hanging out, for asking questions. Again, like I said, if you've been hanging out for the past 2.5 hours, I appreciate the crap out of you for sticking with us this whole entire time. But yeah, I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend as well. Enjoy the college football games. Enjoy the NFL games. Hope all of your fantasy matchups, that you win all of your fantasy matchups or lose all the matchups that you want to lose if you are rebuilding in Dynasty and don't want to win. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, fantastic weekend. Catch you guys next Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, once again for a Friday AMA. We'll be in week 11 next week. What the heck? Time is flying by as we get closer and closer to the fantasy playoffs and deadlines for people. Remove your trade deadlines, people, or at least kick them back in trade in Dynasty. That's your job for next year. We'll see you guys. Peace.